A beautiful purple-haired girl, Mirasu, guides the MC, Rito Mizuhara, to a tinted glass door. She puts her hands on his shoulders as he yells at her to move away while she enters some inputs on a panel in front of them. This reveals the room behind the glass as she presses her melons to his back and whispers in his ear to go ahead and take his pick. The room is full of fully naked girls who have been gathered here specifically to mate with him. It's 2040 in Tokyo as Rito declares his love for his childhood best friend, Arisa Tachibana. She bears an uncanny resemblance to Mira with the same purple hair. She says she's known for a long time. After all, they've known each other for a really long time and have studied together since middle school all the way to college now. She comments on how late he is. Anyways, Rito says it is their last year since he won't be here next year. She gets worried and asks if he's going away on an exchange program, but it's quite the opposite. Rito tells her he's contracted cellular sclerosis, he wasn't feeling well so he got some tests done, and they told him to go to the hospital immediately. She's worried and tells him about a pharmaceutical company with an ad that's currently working on a cure, and she assures him he'll get better. Rito says he's already researched about this and the cure won't be ready for another 4 to 5 years, so he'll have to go into a cold sleep until then. It basically means he'll get better if he takes some rest. So he just wanted to confess his feelings to her as he admits he heard that Maida already asked Arisa out. He asks if she's going to say yes, and Arisa wants to know what he wants her to say. He knows he doesn't have any right to stop her, but he can't ask her to wait for 5 years either. Dude's really conflicted. At this point, Arisa starts crying and walks away. Rito is on the train with his family when his little sister, Mihiru, inquires how it went with Arisa, but he's disappointed to tell her they got into a fight. Their big brother, Ryu, jokes about it and ends up being elbowed by Mihiru. They live in a society with highly sophisticated technology. Food production, transport, communication, medicine, everything in this era is done by machines, and humans were released from the need to work for a living long ago. Now the only ones who work are the ones who think it adds meaning to their life or those who feel a sense of obligation. His father asks him one more time if he really wants to do this, and Rito replies saying it's the only thing he can do. It's not like he has much of a choice. Once they arrive at the hospital, he's called in for an examination, and there doesn't seem to be any complications, so they'll be able to keep him healthy during the cold sleep. Rito is relieved that Takagi is his doctor. Takagi laughs, saying he's flattered to receive that compliment from the genius at the School for Advanced Medicine. The doctor briefs him on how his cure is going to take at least 5 years, but 2 to 3 if he's lucky. I doubt he's feeling fortunate, and he'll be cured once he wakes up. It's time for him to go, and Mihiru can't stop crying, telling him to work hard and come back healed, not sure what he has to work hard on. Rito tells Ryu to take care of himself and Mihiru, and they say they'll see each other soon. A nurse tells Rito he has to take his necklace off, according to the rules. Suddenly, he hears Arisa outside the door as a nurse stops her from going inside because only family is allowed. Ryu requests her presence, saying she is part of their family. Arisa tells Rito she's here to see him off. Not sure that's the right phrase to use. Rito takes off his pendant and hands it to Arisa, asking her to hold on to it for him until he wakes up. Rito lies inside his chamber thinking he's just going to sleep and years will have passed once he wakes up. Mihiru and Arisa keep sobbing while he thinks they're all going to be grown up and he doesn't want to be left behind. His chamber fills up with fluid, but he makes out the last words Arisa says to him, saying she'll be waiting for him for as long as it takes. He manages to lift his hand and press it on the glass against hers, thinking how cute she is as he drifts into his slumber. Rito wakes up from his sleep and sees Mira. He wonders if it's Arisa before quickly realizing it is not her. She wishes him good morning and asks what year it is. Mira says it's 2045 and he's really been asleep for 5 years. She tells him they'll have him start by taking a shower followed by a medical checkup. Strangely, all the nurses and doctors are females who seem to be blushing in his presence. The doctor tells him he's completely healed because the cure was developed and injected into his body while he was asleep. Rito feels grateful and asks if he can see Takagi since he wants to thank him personally, but the doctor tells him Takagi is no longer with them. Rito is surprised and asks if he moved to another hospital, but she just says no without offering any further explanation. He asks to meet his family, but just then Arisa walks in and says she's going to tell him everything that happened during his cryogenic sleep. Rito is transported in a vehicle, but it's strange that he has 2 female bodyguards, and the windows are tinted so he can't see anything outside. The girl formally introduces herself as Mirasu, his dedicated attendant. He's even more surprised when she elaborates that she'll be seen to his needs and any contact with the outside world. What needs could he possibly have when he's finally cured? She has no option but to tell him the facts that 4 years ago a new kind of virus called the MK virus spread around the entire world. It killed the infected within 3 days, and it's transmissible through air. It obviously caused a global pandemic within a short span of time. Looks like COVID has some competition. Rita wonders that if it spread 4 years ago, there surely is a cure by now, but Arisa is disappointed to share that the world's leading AI is still unsuccessful as no cure or vaccine has been found. She presses a button and the windows suddenly turn transparent as he spots refugee camps outside. She says the world's population has dropped by half over this period, and it's become difficult to maintain so many of their technologies, including the food production system. Rito can't take her seriously and thinks she's joking when he hears the population has dropped so low. Suddenly, he opens the door and runs out of the car onto the streets as Arisa calls out after him. At first, he can't understand what's going on. The whole city looks different and wonders what happened to his brother, Mahiru, and Arisa. He sees a woman on the street and calls out to her, but the moment she sees him, she looks frightened and runs away. Slowly, he gains the attention of all the other women who stare at him in awe, incredulous at him being alive. He's not used to this much female attention and immediately thinks he's done something wrong. He runs away convincing himself he's not the weird one when realization starts to dawn. He hasn't seen a single man since he woke up. Mira appears in front of him asking if he's noticed yet, and Rito asks what happened to the men. Mira tells him the MK, a male killer virus, is a virus that's only fatal to men, and thus there are only women left in the world. A very small number of men remain in cold sleep, but 99.9% of them are dead. He angrily asks how he's still alive, and she says they believe it has something to do with contracting cellular sclerosis and its treatment that kept these men alive. The fact that he's alive even in the outside world is proof enough that he's immune to the virus. There are only 5 men left in the whole world, including him, who are capable of activity. With their immunity to the MK virus, they're quite possibly the most valuable resource left on this earth. He really feels like he's dreaming. Suddenly, a woman approaches him acting all crazy seeing a man after so long, but ends up being tasered by one of his bodyguards. Mira tells Rito that of the 100 to 200 women present here, many of them would do it if he asked so for the sake of mankind, and to save the human race. She bends down and asks him to mate with the women of this world. Through a video, Rito learns that in 2040, the incredible MK virus spread around the entire world in just 3 months, as most nations collapsed into anarchy and riots broke out everywhere. The world's government was transferred to an international union governed by women called the UW, or United Women. The few men who remained entered cold sleep, hoping for a vaccine to be developed. The UW sent out armies to suppress the rioting women and began to unify the world and began the development of a vaccine using the most powerful AI. When the women in the world began to despair, a faint hope was found on an island in the Far East. They discovered that a man who had entered cold sleep to receive treatment for cellular sclerosis was immune to the MK virus. The UW secretly terminated his cold sleep and named him number 1 as they discovered he could survive in the outside world. One by one, they plan to do the same with the others undergoing that treatment, since they are humanity's last hope at survival. Mira turns the video off, saying that's what happened while he slept. Rito says it's like a sci-fi novel. Is that the best response he can think of? But Mira is still serious, saying it's completely true. His existence is known only to the people inside this facility and a few of the highest-ranking members of the UW. Thus, she instructs him to avoid selfish public acts like the one he pulled yesterday. She also tells him that humanity's scientific power is beginning to decline since they've lost half their scientists and engineers, and many technologies have also been lost. They've got to use what they still have as they want him and the other men to have as many children as possible, or mankind will go extinct. At this point, he assumes he's being pranked. He asks her about artificial insemination, and she says that's obviously the first thing they tried, but it didn't make a difference as the male children died in a few days. They also tried it with number 1, but embryogenesis was unsuccessful. However, one woman has conceived after messing around with number 1, and that child is humanity's newest hope. They can't expect him to believe all that right after he wakes up from a cold sleep. He asks to go home, but she says it's just not possible as propagating his genes is currently of top priority. She hands him a tablet displaying naked women and asks him to pick one he'd be willing to mate with. Rito gets all shy and still thinks this is some kind of joke. What would they get by pranking someone like him as he hands it back to her? Mira says she has no choice except to make someone he trusts persuade him. The door opens and Mahiru runs in. She cries when she sees him, but is relieved that Rito is alive and healthy. She takes him to see Ryu, who is now in a cold sleep but still alive. Rito feels a sense of determination to save his brother. They're walking through the facility when Ryo finally asks Mahiru about Arisa. She says Arisa has been missing for 3 years. He asks why, because he learned that the virus only affected males, so females should be safe. Mahiru says she spoke to Arisa's mother a while back, but she hasn't been able to contact her daughter either. Mira interrupts, saying Japan and the rest of the world have been quite unstable over the past few years, so Arisa might have been involved in something unfortunate. Worst case scenario, she's dead, but Rito can't picture that as he whips out his phone to call her but receives no response. Mira reports the situation back to her head from Yuga, saying number 2 understands the situation, so he won't do anything reckless like yesterday. The woman breathes a sigh of relief because his existence would cause a mess if it became public knowledge. She inquires about the mating and Mira reports it hasn't begun yet because he doesn't feel up to it. The woman gets mad at Mira for taking him seriously because they know he's not impotent or gay, and reminds Mira of her job and why she's here. Mira hangs her head. Rito lies in bed that night thinking about everything because for him, it is like the world changed overnight. Takagi, Ryu, it's like everyone except Mahiru is gone. Not that he's ungrateful that she's safe and sound. But he can't stop thinking about Arisa and how it's just not possible that she's missing. Just then, Mira enters his room in her see-through night clothes, and he's shocked to see her there at that hour, dressed like that. When he's almost lost his mind, Mira proceeds to strip entirely as she comes on top of him, saying she's obviously here to make him feel better. She goes down on him and kisses him on the lips and begs for his seed. It takes all he has in him as Rito pushes her off and they stand upright. Embarrassed, Mira asks if he doesn't like her. He says that's not it, but with so many people either dead or sleeping, this just doesn't seem right to him because he can't be the only one having a good time, and they say chivalry is dead. She apologizes and walks out when she encounters Naneko Aishiragi, to whom it's evident that Mira failed. She's sorry Mira has to deal with such a wimp. She offers Mira to be impregnated by the man she's in charge of, number 1, Hino Kyuji, but she refuses. Rito continues to lie awake thinking about Arisa, wondering why this is happening to him. He needs to contact her somehow, and that's when he remembers the necklace he gave her and picks up his phone. The next day, Mira takes him to the room full of naked women to have his pick, and she says she'll bring any of them to his room that he likes. They're all young, healthy, and fertile, and most importantly, none of them are here against his will. They're all more than ready and willing to mate with him. After all, there are 5 men in this world and 5 billion women. If none of these are his type, they'll just find more. He screams in frustration at how wrong all of this is, and he's not some stud horse or animal with the way that they're treating him. Mira apologizes for the way he feels but highlights the importance of his seed since their civilization is declining. Food is rationed, and most women are poor, but if they bear his child, all of that can change. That child will be humanity's treasure, and his mother will obviously be guaranteed a good life. She also informs him that the men in cold sleep have a very high probability of dying within a year since the cryogenesis just delays the process. She's practically begging at this point, but Rito asks her for 1 month's time because there's someone he needs to find. If he has to mate with someone, he wants it to be her. Mira allows this on the condition that even before the month is over, he has to mate with a girl of her choosing. Time is of the essence. Hino Kyuji, a number 1, is shown having a relaxing massage by 2 really beautiful women in a room filled with every luxury he can imagine. Watching movies while getting his back rubbed by half-naked girls, that's got to be his dream life. One of the girls asks if he likes this movie, and Hino admits he likes the actress Kiriyama Rena since she's so hot. Neniko, his dedicated assistant, walks in announcing it's mating time and hands him a tablet to choose a girl. He can't quite decide when her eyes land on the TV screen and she gets an idea. Hino's waiting in his bedroom when Kiriyama Rena herself walks in. She looks super shy and feels honored that he chose her out of all the women in the world. As per his request, she's also wearing the same outfit that she was in the movie. He can't believe his eyes and thinks his reality is even better than the movies because she's so beautiful. She takes off her skirt and climbs on the bed as he follows behind, grateful he's getting to live in such a world as he spreads her legs. Hino brazenly continues to fulfill his wildest fantasies with his dream girl as he has the best time ever. Rito has dinner with Mahiru and Mira, and he really seems to think the food is delicious. The chefs can't help but giggle at his compliments as he comments about how there are so many people to cook for him even though it can easily be done by machines. However, Mira assures him they have the finest chefs for all kinds of cuisines: French, Italian, Japanese, and Chinese. Mira continues to eat and tells Rito that Hino, who awoke before him, said that food made by humans is more appetizing. Mira asks for some more, and Mahiru helps her dumb brother realize he's being given special treatment. Rito finally makes a comment about how much Mira eats. He really couldn't help himself, and she just says nutrition is important. Mahiru is amazed at how Mira can maintain her snatched figure and curves while also eating as much as she wants. But when Rito says something about her body, Mahiru gets mad, says something about all boys being the same, and returns to her room. He apologizes on behalf of his sister, but Mira just shrugs it off and asks if he's going to have his dessert. He offers her some, and she accepts, saying it would be a waste to not eat it. Rito thinks Mira might not be a bad person after all. Later, he walks down the corridor, remembering what Mira said about assigning him a personal bodyguard to ensure his safety and a nurse to keep his health in check. This goes without saying that the two of them are going to be sleeping in the same bed every single night. Sleeping in the same bed is fine, but if something beyond that happens to him, he's ready to blame Mira since he's her responsibility. Just as he's about to enter his room, he's approached by Hino, who introduces himself as his senpai. Well, he obviously has a lot more experience in that department. Rito introduces himself as well, and Hino puts his arm around him, saying that since there aren't a lot of men around, they should probably try to get along. He doesn't take time to get to the point about how he's heard that Rito hasn't mated with anyone yet. Hino tries to find something relatable and says he felt the same way when he first woke up and couldn't believe his situation. Was it some gigantic prank, or part of some terrifying human experience? So he thinks it's his responsibility to assure Rito that this paradise is all real. Rito thinks Hino is too optimistic, and he just doesn't feel up to it. Hino laughs at him, calling him the goody-goody type, saying that none of his righteousness matters because the world is a crazy mess right now. The best thing to do would be to enjoy it while he can. Rito thinks about Hino's optimism while he showers and how it would be so much more fun if he could just find Arisa and do it with her. Suddenly, the lights go off and Rito wonders if it's a power outage. He extends his arms, but they land on something he didn't quite expect: a woman's melons. At this point, he should be expecting it. Anyways, she introduces herself as Riz-Anicap and immediately throws herself at him and kisses him. She decides to help herself and wipe him clean down there as she continues to drink in the shower because it's her favorite activity. She's obviously quite skilled because Rito passes out in just a few seconds. His eyes flutter open as he complains about a headache and sees Akane passed out on the sofa across from his bed. Did she carry him there? He's even more shocked to discover another short and cute girl with green hair emerging from inside his bed, asking if it's morning already. He doesn't understand why she's surprised. He asks what she's doing there, and she matter-of-factly responds she's sleeping in his bed. He recalls that she might be the second woman that Mira had mentioned and asks her name. She introduces herself as Sui Yamada, though she's not quite sure of her last name. She tells Rito he can always rely on her, and he seems to think she's a kind-looking nurse, but doesn't really know to what extent he can count on her. Akane wishes Sui good morning and feels left out as she climbs into bed as well, and Rito can't believe they're going to be sleeping in the same bed. As he lies in bed for the rest of the night with Akane and Sui next to him on each side, he remembers Mira saying it's going to be so much easier for them if he just give in to temptation. But this just makes him more determined to not succumb. The next day, Rito, Mira, Akane, and Sui visit the animal experiments lab. Rito is drowsy. He didn't get a wink of sleep last night. Mira comments on how he has made an odd choice for a tour destination, and Rito explains that Arisa Tachibana, the childhood friend he's looking for, supposedly worked here after graduating. Thus, he's hoping to find a clue. One of the employees sees them and enters a PIN code on a device. Sui enjoys herself like she's at the zoo, and Mira inquires about how he's so certain that she's still alive. Rito puts forward his phone and reveals that he gave Arisa his pendant right before he went into a cold sleep. It was originally given to him by his brother as a good luck charm. The pendant has a transmitter in it, and you can't get exact details of its location if it's not in Japan, but Rado had managed to receive its signal. Thus, his conclusion is that she must be alive. Akane comes up behind Rito and presses her melons against his back. She's taller and much more muscular than him, the perfect dom, as she tells him to relax while she takes another sip from her wine. Rito gets all flustered asking her what she's doing as he pushes her back, but she tells him it's just her job. Rito is confused about her job now. How can she be a bodyguard while she's drunk more than half the time? But before she can say anything, they hear a loud rumbling noise, and one of the employees tells them to get out of there. Suddenly, a giant grizzly bear shows up in the corridor that they're standing in. It is quite ferocious and lunges towards them, but Sui grabs Rito and moves him out of the way. She tells Mira and Akane to hurry up and run away, but they stand in place, and Akane tells Sui to do her job. The bear moves towards Sui and Rito screams at her to watch out, but Sui leaps in the air and kicks the bear's head. She doesn't like badly behaved bears. In just one attack, the bear is out cold on the floor. Rito is still confused as Sui announces her mission is complete, and Akane explains that Sui is his bodyguard. However, she starts crying soon after because Rito is hurt and bleeding. She thinks she's a failure as a bodyguard, even though it's just a minor scratch. Rito is catching up quite slowly as he realizes Akane is the nurse, so she doesn't waste a second to tear off her own shit, revealing her melons in the process and using it as a bandage for where he was hurt. Soon, all the employees come running up to them, and Mira scolds them asking who's in charge of security here since they were given strict orders in advance. They apologized for the inconvenience. Mira takes Rito to Tachibana's lab, which is a mess. According to her coworkers, Irisa suddenly disappeared 3 years ago, but a while later someone broke in and stole all her research. They also said she worked quite hard on her research despite the limited resources and budget that she was allocated. She was supposedly well liked too. Rito asks Mira what Arisa was researching and is for some reason shocked to discover that she was working on the MK virus. Mira explains that it's not just AI, but researchers from all over the world who are working on vaccines and antiviruses as hard as they can. I mean, that's what happens in a global pandemic. Among the mess, Rito spots a picture of him and Arisa when they were younger, and she is holding her dog Jiro in her arms. He recalls this memory as he asked Arisa if she had found a hospital for Jiro. She was crying uncontrollably, saying it's a rare disease and that no one's found a cure for it yet. He tries his best to give her some hope, saying a cure might be developed someday, and that was the moment when Arisa decided she wanted to be a doctor and find a cure for Jiro's disease. He tells her it might take years because they're still kids, but she was determined. Seeing her, Rito declared he wanted to be a doctor too, and Arisa was quite surprised because he always said he didn't want to work. But his argument is it would be faster to find a cure for Jiro with 2 people instead of just 1. With just this, he manages to melt her tiny heart. Back in the present, Rito asks Mira if she thinks it's selfish of him to not mate with anybody because there's someone he loves. But she says she's not in a position to answer that question. He further asks about how many more men around the world are in a cold sleep, and she honestly answers that some countries have a poor relationship with the UW, so the true number is still unknown, but it's said to be between 1 and 5 million. Even if he tries his hardest to mate, he thinks the most babies he can make in a year is 100, but if they can get the sleeping men out safely, the world may return to normal. Thus, he shares his decision with Mira to develop a cure for the MK virus. Meanwhile, Mahiru is distributing snacks among some young girls as an older lady thanks her for always stopping by. Mahiru is glad she can be of some help. Suddenly, their attention is turned toward the TV screen as they see a live broadcast by the UW announcing that 1 male survivor has been confirmed by their Japan branch. The Minister of General Affairs, Shudo, introduces Rito on screen with her. All the women's eyes are fixated on the screen as they can't believe a man has survived. Mahiru is shocked and runs outside, seeing her brother on national television, knowing his safety might be heavily compromised. Rito continues to share his message of how he woke up from a cold sleep several days ago and that he's immune to the MK virus. He tries to be positive and give the people some hope that if he's alive and well, there's a chance for all the other men in cold sleep as well. Arisa and one of her colleagues also see this broadcast while they are still undercover. Rito asks for everyone's cooperation as he's going to make a cure for the MK virus. Later that day, Rito yawns because he's so tired and asks Mahiru if she's still mad about the broadcast. She says she is because he attracted attention from the whole world and is quite possibly in danger, but Rito argues he now has permission to leave along with this lab. It's what he has to do to bring Ryo and the others back. Mihiru finally seems to understand but makes him promise he'll rest a lot. She's afraid he'll just collapse. Rito jokes he slept for 5 years, so this is nothing compared to that. Mihiru goes through the things Rito found at Arisa's lab and sees a stuffed toy. She notices there's something inside and hands it to Rito. He finds a smart wristband inside and is intelligent enough to go into the bathroom before he further investigates it. He leaves Mihiru on watch duty and tells her to inform him if someone comes inside. Once inside, he finds a video message from Arisa on the smartwatch in which she's saying she hopes it's Rito who finds this. She says she doesn't have much time to make this, but she's in a certain location researching the MK virus. As much as she doesn't want to believe it, she's afraid she's discovered something terrifying. The MK virus is not natural, it's man-made and was released on purpose. She warns Rito that the world is full of liars and that he shouldn't trust anyone around him. She has more important information about the virus but doesn't have anyone she can trust with it. She cries as she says she misses him. Rito approaches Mira as they take a walk around the courtyard and he tells her she's a lot like Arisa, but she's more put together than her. Arisa can be a bit childish, but Mira tells him she has people out there looking for Arisa. She doesn't know if they'll be able to find her, but it's worth a shot. He thanks her but says for now he's going to prioritize making a cure with the small amount of information he's got from Arisa's lab. Mira apologizes once more for endangering his life the other day since the staff were slow to notice that the bear cage had broken. He says it's fine now since his wounds have healed up quite quickly as well. He's more surprised at how strong Sui is, and Mira says she's received special training. Rito also empathizes with Mira, asking if she feels bad that she got stuck with him because from her perspective she needs him to have lots of children, but he keeps giving her one reason after another as to why he won't mate. He says he's sorry, and Mira tells him he's a very kind man. Later that evening, while Mira is taking a shower, she comes across the wristband that Rito had left in there and ends up seeing Arisa's message to him. Rito is full of questions that if the MK virus is man-made, then who made it? Probably a woman, and why? Obviously to get rid of all men. The UW ministers react to Rito's bold move of announcing his existence and plans to create a cure to the world. However, they are concerned about how HQ is going to react to this. Certainly not by declaring a war, since they'd gained the initiative by letting Rito conduct that broadcast. He's made himself a beacon of hope for women all over the world. They also discuss Number One's progress since he seems to have mated with about 100 women since he woke up, of which 28 are already expecting, and will have children soon. Compared to him, Number Two is a complete failure, and they blame Mira as they decide to make preparations to awaken Number Three. It's the year 2040 in Japan when a boy named Shouta Doi is being bullied by a group of people. They make fun of his interests as the obvious leader of the group kicks him and says all kinds of mean and hurtful things to Doi as they all leave him in a pathetic state, promising to continue it later. The poor third-year student Doi walks through the school halls as everyone stares at his filthy appearance and recognizes him as the guy who the Takamatsu group is after. Useless bystanders. He passes by a classroom where a pink-haired girl, Shien Hoshino, also seems to pity his condition. He comes across all kinds of people, but nobody really talks to him. He remembers one of his classmates coming up to him, asking if he likes cues and offering to share the data from their latest songs. They ended up walking home together and becoming fast friends, but one day Doi came across his friend being bullied by Takamatsu. He was forcing his friend to strip, so Doi stepped in to stand up for him. However, this just turned Takamatsu's attention from his friend to Doi, so he decided to pick on Doi instead starting tomorrow. The friend Doi had decided to protect also ended up joining Takamatsu and left Doi all alone feeling like an idiot. Doi is playing piano all by himself in the school's music room with just his teacher Yuzuki Hainu, who seems to be the only person who genuinely cares for him as she asks him what's wrong. He confides in her, saying that everyone calls him Doji nowadays, Doji, slow and stupid, and is like an old man because his hair is white. She apologizes even though there's not much she can do about it, and assures him he's not slow and stupid but smart and strong instead. She's pretty close to him at this point, and he just exclaims that his entire body is exhausted. Not from the bullying though, but Yuzuki does something I don't think anyone was expecting as she presses her lips against his to confirm that he has a fever and tells him to head home for the day. Two girls interrupt them and Yuzuki asks them what the matter is, but it turns out they have just forgotten something. Doi walks out of the music room while Yuzuki is busy with the other two, but she tells Doi to make sure he goes to a hospital, and he just nods. Doi's name is called out while he's in the waiting room of the hospital, and once he gets his checkup done, the doctor tells him to call his family. Doesn't sound like good news. The doctor tells him he has a disease called cellular sclerosis. The next day at school, Yuzuki announces in his class that Doi will be taking a leave of absence from school and that he'll be in the hospital for a very long time. She tells his classmates about the disease and that they shouldn't worry, as if anyone cares about him. But the doctor's words resonate in Doi's mind about how it's a fatal disease with no cure, and the only option he has at surviving is going into cryogenic sleep. All he can think of is why him, for the worst possible fate. It's ironic at this point. Yuzuki tells Doi to tell his classmates goodbye, but no one shows even the tiniest bit of interest in him. Shane receives a phone call while everyone else is talking amongst themselves and then makes all kinds of excuses to leave the classroom. Yuzuki tries her best to stop them, saying they can't just leave like this, but they're unbothered as the most they can say is, "Bye Doji, don't die." Doi asks Yuzuki what agency Shane is part of because she's apparently famous but won't tell him. Yuzuki doesn't know either, and Doi walks out of the classroom while thanking her. He walks into the school grounds and sees his old friend walking away while everyone else is busy in their own friend groups, and he just feels so left out. He walks to the side of the building where he accidentally comes across Takamatsu doing the deed with his girlfriend Erika, while he complains about how loud she is and that someone might hear them. Suddenly, Takamatsu spots Doji and lunges at him. They both got the delusion that Doi was standing there watching them, as if he doesn't have better things to do. As if that wasn't enough, Takamatsu makes more fun of Doi, saying he's heard Doi has contracted some nasty disease, and that he's going to die a virgin as he spits on him, saying at least he got something good to see before he died. They leave him in the dust, as he's furious, thinking people like them should be the ones to die, not him. That night, Doi lies curled up in bed thinking maybe it's all for the better because 5 years from now he'll never have to see them again. But he still can't wrap his head around why this is happening to him. He receives a call from his little sister asking him how he's doing. She asks about their father's whereabouts, but Doi tells her he's at work. She's disappointed but not surprised and feels like he should be present by Doi's side at a time like this. He says it's fine, and she wishes she could visit, and Doi hopes they can make medicine for her too. She asks how long he's going to be asleep, and he tells her about 4 to 5 years as they joke about how she'll be older than him once he returns. The next day, Doi is at the hospital, and the doctor asks if he's ready. Doi assures him he is and sadly says no one is coming. As he closes his eyes, the last thing he hopes for is the world to be a better place once he wakes up. 5 years later, Doi opens his eyes to a beautiful blonde girl, Karen Kamiya, launching confetti in his face and congratulating him on his recovery. She introduces herself as his personal attendant, as she says it is time for him to relive his high school years and have a whole lot of fun. Some girls in the locker room of a high school discuss rumors about a boy attending their school and share their nervousness and excitement as each of them hopes he'll pick her. Karen guides Doi to his room, calling him Shouta-sama. He's not used to the respect and tells him to get comfortable. There are 2 beds and plenty of space since it was originally meant for 2 people. Karen proceeds to unpack his bags while he sits on the edge of the bed as everything Karen has just told him about the current world situation sinks in. Karen has told him she's been sent by the Yugagyu to take special care of him. Doi wonders if most men in the world are really dead, that automatically makes him valuable. He asks Karen how old she is, but she says it's a secret, but she'll be in the same class as him. Doi deduces she's 5 years younger, but shortly gets confused as to how old he is after the cold sleep, 18 or 23. He asks her again if he's really the only man, but she tells him a lot of them are in cold sleep, including his father. It might take some time, but someday he can see him again. He asks about his sister, saying she should be in America with her mother, but Karen says she can't really say for sure. The world's quite messed up, so contact with any place outside is quite limited. Thus, Doi will only be allowed in this dorm and school. He is immune to the virus, but it's everywhere, so if he needs anything, she'll be sure to take care of it. She guides him to class, telling him to be cheerful when he greets everyone as she introduces him as the new transfer student. Doi isn't feeling hopeful and hangs his head as he walks into the classroom full of girls and introduces himself. He believes that keeping him in the same high school as he was before is their way of keeping him from being stressed. Though he's not sure how much of Karen's words he believes, it was clear that she's trying to make things easier for him. After all, hearing that 99.9% of the world's men are dead doesn't feel quite real. But he hasn't seen a single man or anyone he knew since he woke up, but thinks it's natural since 5 years have passed. He's glad he doesn't have to see his bullies ever again. He finds himself staring at the undergarments of the girl sitting in front of him through her sheer blouse, but Karen interrupts and asks if he'll come with her after class. Doi asks her if it's okay for him to be studying at school while the world faces such a massive crisis, and she says it's absolutely fine because even with robots and AI, they need an elite class to rule the world. Karen guides Doi to the music room where they see Yuzuki, who runs and hugs Doi. She's so happy to see him and glad that he's recovered since she believes in his strength. Karen mentions something about Yuzuki giving Doi some kind of reward as she leaves the room. Doi turns to Yuzuki holding his hand, asking if he's free tonight since she has a lot to talk about. Doi sits on the school grounds thinking about Yuzuki's invitation to her room at 9, wondering what on earth she would want to talk about. He lets his imagination wander but scolds himself for thinking of such lewd things about his teacher. That might be the exact reason why she's called him. Karen comes up to him asking if he's bored of just watching the girls play, and he admits he never likes the gym. It's just easier to rest. She tells him not to be shy and asks if any of the girls in front are his type. She introduces Hiraji Shunka as someone with small but nicely shaped melons, and Ichiju Natsu, who belongs to a rich family and has bigger melons than they look. Doi asks why she keeps talking about their bodies, but she ignores him as she shows him Todo Akira, the best player with G cups, along with Kuroda Rain Shifuyu, terrible at athletics, but a genius who skipped grades to be in this class. Doi says he's sure they're all good people and admits he was pretty nervous when he was told the school would have only girls. Karen says it's alright since humanity doesn't have time for fights anymore. Doi finds himself wondering what happened to his bullies even though they shouldn't matter, and thinks the M-Key virus probably got them. Karen repeats she'll do everything she can to support him, and he should get to know the girls better. That night, Doi goes to Yuzuki's room and finds her dressed in a short pink dress. She apologizes for her informal attire and explains she was just in the bath, and thanks him for coming even though he might be tired after his first day. Yuzuki ends up telling him what happened to her over the past 5 years, but he doesn't hear any of it. All he could focus on was her curves. When suddenly she asks him how he feels about her. He gets flustered and can't think of an answer, but Yuzuki says she was relieved when she saw him. Suddenly the lights dim and Yuzuki grabs his face, saying this is his reward for beating his disease. He can just say no if he doesn't want it, but he would be an idiot for passing up such an opportunity. She kisses him on the lips and climbs on top of him as she takes off her dress, revealing her melons. She unbuttons his shirt, but he's unable to move, and she tells him to leave it all on her. All Doi can think at the moment is if it's a dream he doesn't want to wake up from. Who doesn't dream of banging their hot teacher? Yuzuki licks his chest and provocatively lies in front of him, asking Doi to show her how manly he's become. He's up and at it as he finishes, only to receive a hug from her. Karen is proud of her first success. The next day in class, Doi thinks about his first time being involved with a woman, that too with Yuzu-sensei, but he's sure it was just a one-time thing. He's staring out the window when Ichiju asks him if he's thinking about the girl he likes because he seems kind of sad. He tells her it's nothing, and she insists, wanting to know what's on his mind. He tries to cover it by saying it's about his favorite music, and she asks him what kind he likes. Doi proceeds to tell her about the Keys, an idol group, and says he likes most of their songs. Ichiju says they're all pretty cute, including their outfits, as she purposely presses her melons against him to get closer to him. Doi starts to think she smells really good, and soon Shunka shows up as well, saying she recognizes the Keys. She seems pretty excited as she says she likes Amima, and asks Doi who he likes, and he says Kirihara Chinami. Shunka says she also likes how hard Kirihara works, and the song she did for a certain anime was great, and the two of them launch into conversation, leaving poor Ichiju out. She pinches Doi on his thigh and walks away as Shunka keeps talking about the idols' outfits. After class, Doi walks to the gymnasium where the girls are playing volleyball. He's caught staring at Akira's giant rack by Chifuyu, who tells him to watch her play because she's even better. Chifuyu tells Akira she's here to settle a score, but Akira looks annoyed that she's interrupting practice. Akira spots Doi in the doorway and agrees to play. Chifuyu is up against Akira, who launches the ball into the air with such speed and power that it hits poor Chifuyu's head and then lands on Doi's head, who ends up on the floor. All the girls crowd around him asking if he's okay. He's fine, really. Akira feels miserable and walks up to him as she's practically bowing in front of him to apologize, saying she really didn't mean to hurt him. He says she's just exaggerating because he's totally fine, but she insists she wouldn't forgive herself if something had happened to him. Akira says she'll do anything to make it up to him, and he blushes once more thinking of her big melons. Someone suggests Doi should go to the nurse's office. Later, Doi is playing piano in the music room, all alone when Yuzuki walks in and apologizes to Doi for making him come over to her room so late last night. Doi starts to feel embarrassed and says he's sorry when Yuzuki notices the band-aid on his forehead as he tells her what happened and a ball just hit him. She insists she wants to see as she peels the band-aid off and says it's a little swollen. Yuzuki asks if it hurts and Doi says just a little because he wants to prove he's manly. A little bruise won't hurt him. Yuzuki proceeds to perform a little trick to make the pain go away as she licks and kisses his forehead where he got hurt and puts the bandage back on, hoping this will make him feel better. She turns around and asks Doi if what happened between them last night upset him, and he says that though he was surprised, he was glad that he got to do it with her. Yuzuki says she hasn't been able to stop thinking about him since then, and her melons keep hurting. She thinks it's the perfect cue to take off her shirt and reveal her melons to him as she asks him to perform the same trick to make her pain go away. They start right there as she sits on the piano while he tastes and fondles her melons and she can't control her voice. Maybe it's a little late for them to realize they shouldn't be doing it in the music room. Karen reports number 3's mating success back to the Secretary of Civil Affairs from Yugoi, who approves of her methods as long as she's getting results. Karen is determined not to lose to either Hino or Rito. Soon after that, Yuzuki and Doi are found right at it in any place they can find in the school, whether it is the stairs or empty classrooms. The fear of being caught is what makes him excited. One morning, Yuzuki wakes up in Doi's bed and tells him school is off for the day, so they should spend some relaxing, quality time together. That is if he doesn't mind. Doi is super fast to respond, and of course he doesn't. He can't stop himself from blushing thinking about his first time with Yuzuki-sensei, and they've been doing it every day since then. He notices her body is getting better each day and gets up to hug her from the back while she's making coffee, wishing they could stay like this forever. Yuzuki turns around to kiss him, asking if he wants to do it again. Only an idiot would say no to that question. And he nods his head. Once they're finished, Doi feels so fulfilled in that moment, but he has no idea what's coming for him next. Karen drags Doi to the school pool while he insists he's just going to watch. Once they arrive, Karen declares to everybody that Doi is going to be participating in Gen class with them today. Doi still questions if he really has to, and Karen responds by saying it's been a week since he woke up from cold sleep, so he needs to get some exercise in. Doi's not the usual type to exercise. Karen jokes about how he doesn't need any because he's already getting enough in with Yuzu-sensei. Doi realizes that of course, Karen knows about them since she's the one who set them up in the first place. Karen admits that Yuzuki is a little shy and needs a small push. Doi is grateful to her, and in exchange Karen expects him to take this class for her today. She insists swimming is fun. During the warm-up session, Doi participates along with the rest of the girls, but gets the feeling everyone is looking at him. He notices Ichiju and Shunka blush when they make eye contact and wonders if he's being too self-conscious. They all get into the pool, and Akira and Shunka take part in a swimming contest, which Shunka loses by just a little time difference. Shunka praises Akira for being such a strong swimmer, and Akira tries to motivate Shunka by saying she's improved a lot and gotten quite faster. Doi hides in the water thinking of how amazing Akira and Shunka's bodies are. Meanwhile, poor Chifuyu is in the delusion that these commoners can try as hard as they want, but she'll obviously be number one. Doi asks Chifuyu if she's competing or something, and she seems surprised that he hasn't heard about it. She's positive he has something to look forward to and tells him she was known as the flying fish of the Rhine River. Thus, she's sure to win. Akira walks by saying flying fish don't live in rivers as she kneels on the edge of the pool and apologizes to Doi for yesterday. She asks if he's okay where the ball hit him, but all of Doi's attention is diverted by the spectacular view of Akira in her tight swimsuit. He manages to say he's fine and she shouldn't worry about it. Akira is relieved and blushes a little since it seems like she wants to ask him something if she gets first place. However, this precious moment is disturbed by Chifuyu, who takes off Akira's swimsuit from the back, revealing her massive rack, and jokes that if her melons wasn't so big, she'd be able to swim faster. Akira is practically fuming because she's embarrassed, and she picks up Chifuyu off the floor and throws her into the water. Shifu thinks she's drowning and starts flailing her arms, complaining that she can't stand. Another girl swims over to give her a reality check and says the water is shallow enough for her to stand. Suddenly, Ichiju's lap time is announced and it looks like she got first place. She waves over to Doi, who waves back, and Akira walks away, disappointed. Karen is just enjoying playing with her pawns. Doi is on call with Yuzuki, who apologizes, saying she can't meet him today and they plan to see each other tomorrow. He hears a knock on his door and is surprised to see Ichiju standing there in her night suit, telling him she'll be staying here starting today. He immediately receives a call from Karen saying she forgot to tell him that the air conditioner in one of the girls' rooms was not working, so they are changing their rooms, but there is just one room less, so Ichiju will be staying in his room. Karen makes more underlying jokes about how Ichiju might be able to repay this favor, and Doi is a little slow to realize that this is what everyone was competing for at the pool today. Karen says he's absolutely right, as the reward was the right to spend a week in his room. She promises it will be more fun if he thinks of it as a game. A week from now, it will be a different girl, so she suggests he should get along with her and disconnects the call. Doi has no choice but to agree. The next morning, Doi wakes up and sees Ichiju awake already as she wishes him good morning. He's washing his face, thinking about how he didn't get much sleep and can't wrap his head around the idea of changing roommates every week. Maybe he shouldn't have been going to Yuzu Sensei's house every night, as he wonders if she's mad at him. Doi asks Ichiju to look away while he changes into his uniform, which she does. He asks why she hasn't changed yet, because they'll be late for class. Ichiju gets all shy and admits that she has a favor to ask him. Doi responds he'll do anything he can to help. Ichiju finally gets the courage to ask Doi to help him change, as she starts bawling, saying back home her maids would always help her out of her clothes. Ever since she came to this school, she's been trying her best to do it herself, but it always takes so long, so her roommates would help her out. All Doi can think of is that she's really rich. Ichiju cries and apologizes for being such a failure, but Doi assures her, saying if her family is like that, it's not really her fault, and there's not much she can do about it. Thus, he agrees to help. Doi unzips the front of her shirt and takes it off, trying his best not to give in to temptation and reminding himself to stay loyal to Yuzu Sensei. It gets even harder when he gets to take her pants off and notices a scar on Ichiju's thigh. Later that day, Doi meets Karine and tells her he was quite surprised this morning, and Karen takes it very casually. She says the Ichiju clan is an old one and they're not like most families. Still, Doi can't believe that she can't get dressed on her own. It's going to be a long week, Karen explains. It's normal for Ichiju to let other people see her naked, and was certain she wasn't bothered by him seeing her naked since she's used to it. Truth be told, Doi was more bothered about it than she was, but they haven't talked since they arrived at school. Karen recommends he should help her change in the bath, and Doi literally spits out his water. He apologizes to Karen and he tells him not to worry about it, and she leaves to wash her face. Shunka and a few other girls approach his table, and he whispers to Shunka about how Ichiju takes her baths, as she can't help herself even to undress. Shunka starts blushing and asks Doi if he wants to take a shower with Ichiju, but says she's joking and that Ichiju always went with her roommate who used to help her. Anyways, she tells Doi she's headed to class and walks off with her friend, talking about what was on TV last night. Doi still finds it hard to believe that he's talking to girls like this so naturally. Later that day, Doi speaks to Yuzuki and fills her in on everything that's happened. Yuzuki agrees and says that does sound a lot like Ichiju, and Doi asks if he can come to her room that night. Yuzuki blows him off again, saying she's busy and can't see him. Doi asks if this is because she's upset about him having another girl in his room. If that's the case, he can tell Karen immediately, but she says it's just because of a biological reason that happens with girls. Doi immediately feels embarrassed and apologizes to her for not understanding sooner. She also says sorry for making him worry. Yuzuki tells him he needs to make sure that he's getting along with Ichiju and the other girls. He insists he doesn't need anyone but her, and as happy as that makes her, she explains that if he's only giving her attention, it might make the other girls mad. She promises to talk to him later and disconnects the call. Doi is certain no one except Yuzu Sensei and Karen know about their intimate relationship, and he starts to wonder if the other girls might actually like him. That night, he can't fall asleep and starts thinking if Ichiju likes him when he turns over to find her standing over his head, asking if she can sleep in his bed. She says she was barely able to handle it last night, but she can't fall asleep unless she's sleeping with someone else. If that's the case, he allows her. Ichiju states that he's a very nice person. When he asks why, she casually mentions he probably saw the scar on her butt today. She's had it since she was little, and though it doesn't hurt her anymore, it still bothers her, but Doi didn't bring it up at all. She also confesses that she was supposed to get married after high school to a man 20 years older than her, for her father's business. But unfortunately, both her father and her future husband passed away because of the MK virus 5 years ago. She calls herself a bad woman for being glad that the virus came and she has a chance to meet him. Ichiju tells Doi she's loved him from the moment she set eyes on him, and Doi assures her she's not a bad person for feeling this way because he's also glad the world turned out like this. They kiss each other, and Ichiju tells him how happy she is as she instructs him to take off her clothes. He does as he's told, and she says she's used to the servants doing it for her, but when he does it makes her heart flutter. They end up making out passionately as he pulls off the rest of her clothes, and Ichiju comments about how aggressive he is. Ichiju apologizes for the noises she's making, but Doi tells her it's alright as he sticks his fingers inside her, and she says she's really happy to be with him. One thing leads to another, and they end up doing the deed and spending a great night. Meanwhile, ever since Rito woke up, he's been hard at work researching a cure for the virus. People all over the world are talking about him, even old ladies who discuss that he had curry for dinner and how they wished he was their grandson. One also wishes she was 10 years younger. Other girls comment on how he's just the type of boy who should be protected, has such cute eyes, and wishes him all the best for his project. By now he has his own TV show that 94% of the people watch. He can't believe he said I read books and like serious and hardworking girls on national television. Rito and Mira watch surveillance footage of a large crowd outside the facility demanding to see him. Many of them just want to mate. Mira offers him the list, but he refuses, asking if she's seen Mahiru. Mira reveals that Mahiru has been spending a lot more time in the refugee area. She says she's been ignoring it until now, but if somehow word gets out that she's his sister, there's no telling what kind of danger she might be prone to. So Mira decides to ask Mahiru to stop. Rito apologizes for the trouble on her behalf. Doi wakes up the next morning with Ichiju's melons in his face and sits up to drink a sip of water. He recalls their activities last night and offers her some water too, but she asks his help to drink it. Thus, he takes a sip and transfers it to her mouth through a kiss. What more help could she possibly need? Ichiju asks him what she should do because the thought of leaving his room makes her sad. Rito walks outside thinking about Mahiru and how she's headed to the refugee camp. He comes across Hino sitting on a bench, and he shows him some ultrasounds as he says he's going to be a dad soon. Rito congratulates him and says if it's a boy, it might be world-changing. Hino tells him they don't know the gender yet, so Rito feels embarrassed, but Hino tells him not to worry about it. Anyways, Rito continues saying he can't imagine having a kid. But Hino starts to tease Rito, saying he's getting a little frustrated. It's not healthy to have blue balls. Doi finds Yuzuki playing piano in the music room and walks in telling her he's sad because he hasn't been seeing her lately. She says she feels bad about it too, but quickly changes the topic to ask how things are going with Ichiju. Doi doesn't know how to respond to her, but Yuzuki assures him it's okay because Doi belongs to everybody. Doi is confused about her statement. Does she know something he doesn't? But Yuzuki starts crying and runs out of the room. Doi meets up with Karen, who's surprised because Doi rarely wants to see her. He says he needs to talk about something important because so many strange things have happened since he woke up from a cold sleep. Karen admits the world has changed quite a bit over the past 5 years. Doi says at first he thought she was lying about there not being any more men left in the world, but nobody would benefit from lying to him on this level. He doesn't know what the girls are feeling, but he also realizes that neither Yuzuki nor Ichiju was putting on an act. So he believes that the rest of the men in the world have either died or are in cold sleep. Doi asks if other men like him are immune to the MK virus, and Karen beats around the bush, saying it's a wide world so there might be at least one. He also asks if the school is a way to somehow experiment on him, and Karen first asks why he thinks that. Doi explains his theory about how resistance to the MK virus makes him incredibly rare and valuable. He's certain they conducted a lot of tests and did extensive research on him while he was asleep, but they still haven't been able to figure out why he's resistant or how the virus works. She tells him to carry on, and he says they aren't locking him up and conducting experiments on him for 2 reasons. Out of respect for his basic human rights, and secondly, if he killed himself out of stress, their loss would be incalculable. So the point of this school is to bring together girls that they think would like to keep him in a good mood while they collect the data they need to fight the MK virus. His point is, if that's the case, that's totally not fair to people like Yuzuki and Ichiju who might have genuine feelings for him. He tells her to leave them out and offers his full support. Karen leads him back to class, commending how close he got to the truth with the limited information he had. She says this whole school was put together for him to mate with as many girls as he could. She explains all the girls here are of their own free will, and if he manages to impregnate even one of them, both the baby and the mother will be taken very good care of. Just to show him how much each girl here wants him, Karen tells them to stand and strip, which they obey. The UW are proud of number 3's progress and decide to remove Shu Mira as number 2's attendant. Rito discovers that an inactive virus vaccine is not feasible, and he's not getting anywhere with a weakened variant either. He's really frustrated since his promise to Mira of 1 month's timeline is coming closer. He wonders if he really needs to keep that promise now. Anyway, he walks out of his lab just to see another woman with no clothes on except her lab coat and very visible melons, muttering to herself about how experiments on living creatures are difficult. They bump into each other and she falls on top of him, revealing more of her melons. Rito insists he's fine, but as soon as the woman sees him, she gets frightened out of her mind at the sight of a man and runs off. Later, while Rito is signing autographs for fangirls, an angry-looking girl with dark hair approaches, calling him a pervert who attacks any girl he sees. The fans leave and Rito is confused as to why she's used that word for him. She talks about what she witnessed earlier that day when he pinned a woman to the ground back in the hallway. Rito tries to defend himself by saying they just bumped into each other, but the angry girl doesn't let him finish and calls him disgusting. She walks away saying he won't be enjoying all this attention for just being a man for long. While he's still left wondering what she meant, he receives a call from Mira asking if they can speak. Rito walks into a room in disbelief when he hears Mira isn't going to be his attendant anymore. Inside, he also sees the Secretary of Civil Affairs and Shudo, the Minister of General Affairs from the Udadi. The former says it's good that he's here and formally introduces him to his new attendants, Katajiri Rea, the angry dark-haired girl, and Kuroda Maria, the woman he bumped into. Rito asks them what's going on here, and the Civil Affairs Secretary tells him he's now famous worldwide and in a unique position compared to the rest of the numbers. Thus, they're giving him more than one attendant, since there's no rule saying he can have only one. Kuroda Maria is a researcher, and their technology minister seems to trust her quite a bit, so she'll be useful in his research. Maria says it's nice to meet him, while the secretary explains that Ria will relieve Mira and take care of all his other needs. She's a former citizen relations officer, and her job was to interact with the people on behalf of the Udagi and keep them pacified. She knows the outside world well, so if he has any questions, he can just ask her. Mira takes her leave and walks out of the room even as Rito calls out to her. He asks the UW representatives why they had to make Mira leave, but Shudo just responds that if he likes her so much he should just mate with her. Rito refuses angrily and Shudo covers her ears, telling him not to shout. The other secretary announces that as soon as the paperwork is finished, Mira will no longer be his attendant, but she will still be allowed to stay with him as a mating candidate. Once the UW members leave, Ria speaks and blames Rito for Mira losing her job. Her one and only task was to get him to mate with as many women as possible. She failed, so it's obvious that she lost her job. If he doesn't like it, he should just go mate with someone. While Ria permits him to research a cure, she says that if he's not going to mate with anyone, she's going to restrict his other freedoms. Rito cries about how that's not fair. Ria catches up with Mira in the corridor, saying it's been a long time since they've seen each other. Does this stone-cold girl even have a heart? She comments about how Mira has lost weight, but Mira just bows and asks her to take care of Rito. Ria says she doesn't need to worry about that man who's just a loser and views women as tools. Mira jumps to defend him, saying that's not who he is, as she tells Ria goodbye. Ria tries to stop her, warning her to never let her guard down around a man, but Mira just responds saying Ria is as beautiful as ever, as if time has stopped for her. Ria is left wide-eyed. The next day, Sui, Kuroda, Ria, and Rito are on the train when Rito asks Kuroda where they are headed. She explains they are going to Kaiman City, which has a hot spring. Rito is confused about what's so special about a hot spring, and Kuroda also reveals there's someone important regarding the MK virus research. Rito stands so abruptly at the mention of someone important that Kuroda is startled and spills her drink all over her clothes. She asks what he's doing, but he apologizes and she goes off to change. Mira watches this from a different seat, and Akane suggests she should go over to them if that's what she really wants. Mira reminds her she's not his attendant anymore, and Akane just sighs, complaining about how Mira has such a difficult personality. Kuroda takes off her clothes in the bathroom, while Rito apologizes once more from outside the locked door. She says it's not his fault because she's just not used to men, and Rito suggests they should try to be a little more casual since they're close age-wise too. She agrees, and Rito proceeds to ask her if she studies virology. She does, and can proudly say she has a significant deal of knowledge about the MK virus. Rito remembers Arisa's recording saying the virus was artificially created and asks Kuroda how she thinks the virus was born. Kuroda explains there are 3 theories regarding the origin of the virus: the regressive hypothesis, the escape hypothesis, and the virus first hypothesis, but they don't know for sure yet. And since they haven't been able to figure out its origin, then saying how it was born might not even be the right phrase to use. She states it's possible that it's something that has existed for eons and has just recently come into contact with humanity. In fact, in biology, viruses aren't even treated as living creatures. Rito notices how she's suddenly much more talkative. He puts this bizarre idea out there that a human might have made it, and she opens the door, while she's still bare, and says he's got quite an interesting theory. He's shocked to see her and tells her to put some clothes on, and Kuroda says they might be able to find some clues where they're headed. Rito asks what she means, and Kuroda says Kaiman City is where the first victim of the MK virus in Japan appeared. They arrive at Kaiman City, and Sui is excited about how large their living space is and the fantastic view of the lake that they have. Ria says there's a group of students on a trip here, but besides that, they have the place to themselves. Akane says she's heard they have spiny lobster for dinner, and Sui suggests they should go play ping pong. Meanwhile, Kuroda has the best idea to head to the hot spring. Ria, apparently the mom of the group, reminds them they're not here to play. Rito says the place is nice and wishes Mahiru would have come along, but Ria says they couldn't have allowed an outsider. The rest of the girls are already participating in a pillow fight. For his safety, Rito has to go to a holographic indoor hot spring while the rest of the girls join him. Since there's no separate men's and women's bath, they all decide to jump in together to have more fun. Rito decides to leave, but Akane offers to wash his back as thanks for all this help. Somehow, Rito ends up washing each of the girls' backs until it's Mira's turn, and he notices how pretty her back is. Akane is last and insists he uses his hands since her skin is quite sensitive. Rei-a would rather die than have him touch her, so Akane uses his time to have him rub her whole body. However, the poor guy can't take it anymore and runs inside. The next day, Ria, Kuroda, and Rito visit Ms. Taniguchi. Ria introduces herself as a representative of UW's Japan branch and is about to introduce her to Rito, but she interrupts saying she already knows who he is. Rito says they're here to talk about her husband, but she insists she's already told them everything she knows. She had seen his press conference but doesn't seem to think it's her problem anymore. It's not like she can get her husband back even if he does make a cure. Ria inquires what her husband was doing just before he contracted the virus, but she refuses. Ria says please because this is all for humanity's sake, but she's not having any of it. She's furious and blames them for taking his body and slicing it into pieces. Kuroda explains that it's called an autopsy and they had no choice if they wanted to find out what happened to him. Ms. Taniguchi says she doesn't care because all that matters to her is that he hates doctors. Rito asks what he can do to get her help, and she says he can screw her. Obviously, she's joking and tells them to leave. While they're walking out, Kuroda tells him that the MK virus appeared in multiple spots around the world simultaneously. There's a theory that it was a bioterrorism by a nation-state or a terrorist group. There's also a theory that the Earth created itself to purge humanity, but no one knows where it came from. Ms. Taniguchi's husband was the first victim in Japan. He hated technology and had no GPS on him. If they knew where he was, or what he might have been doing, they might get a clue, but Ms. Taniguchi greatly distrusts the U-body, especially since the government at the time was so rough. That night, Ms. Taniguchi is shown speaking to Arisa on call as she tells her the person she cares about was just here, so why won't she speak to or meet him? The next day, Rito and Ria are back visiting Ms. Taniguchi, who tells them they never learn. No matter how many times they try, it won't change a thing. Rito insists and explains to her that if they could just know what her husband was doing, they might be able to learn a lot more about the virus. Ms. Taniguchi is of the opinion that he should stop making vaccines and start focusing on making babies. His biggest job is making babies, and she says she's sure he's having plenty of fun with the crowd of girls behind him. Riz speaks up for him, now saying he hasn't mated with or had any kind of relations with any woman since he's woken up. Ms. Taniguchi says she doesn't believe him and tells the rest of the girls to leave. Once they are alone, she asks him the reason for this decision, since most people in this situation would be going at it like a rabbit with any girl they could find. Even with that, they would have enough time to go over this research. Rito simply says he doesn't have such a personality. She outright asks if he's Gale, but he refuses, saying a lot of the girls are very pretty and he'd love to do what they want him to. So Ms. Taniguchi repeats her question and asks why he doesn't do any of that, even if it's what the world will benefit from the most. Rito reveals that there's a girl he's in love with, but he's figured that if he directs his efforts towards the development of a cure for the MK virus, it would make up for it. She passes a hint of a smile, turns around and lies down as she declares they are done talking. That night, Sui takes Rito to an outdoor bath. She's super scared of Ria finding out about this, but Rito says it's fine because there's nobody here, and it has been a long time since he has been outdoors. He thinks about how Taniguchi avoided revealing any information. His thoughts are interrupted when Sui suddenly tells him to hide because someone is coming. He goes inside the steam room while she tries to distract some of the female students who have just arrived. He decides this will just have to be his hiding place when a tall blonde woman with a massive rack walks in and sits next to him. He gets up to leave, but she threatens to scream if he moves, so he sits back down. He asks why she's wearing a yukata in the sauna, and she explains she's an exchange student who loves Japan. She declares they'll play a game. If she leaves the sauna first, she won't tell anyone he's here, and if he leaves first, he'll have to do one thing she asks, as she uses his full name to address him. They decide to see who can last longer as she begins to take her yukata off, revealing her bare melons. She introduces herself as Chloe, an exchange student from Japan, and asks if he would like to sleep with her. He's sure he's good at self-control. She says his samurai soul is impressive as she passes out from the heat. Rito takes her outside and tries to give her some water, thinking that he should probably call a kana. Just then, she holds his hand and asks him to feed her with his mouth, threatening to scream if he refuses. Suddenly, Sui returns with Rhea and Akane, only to find him with his lips pressed against her mouth. Everyone is shocked to see Rito mating with a strange woman right before their eyes, and they all leave in disgust, calling him an animal. Chloe sits up and Rito realizes she had just put on an act, as she claims American girls are strong. She takes off all her clothes, hoping to have a long, good chat with him. The next day, Rito is massaging Ms. Taniguchi's shoulders, and she asks him to go to a bakery on the corner just outside the building and wants him to bring a white jam pastry from there. Ria says she can send someone from Udari, but she refuses to eat it unless Rito is the one who brings it for her. Rito agrees to go, and Ria follows him. Meanwhile, Ms. Taniguchi wants to talk to Mira privately. She asks Mira if she knows Arisa Tachibana, and Mira says she knows Arisa is Rito's childhood friend. But that's not what she meant, so she asks a different question instead and asks Mira what Rito is like. Mira says he's very selfish, and while it's wonderful that he's working on a cure, she's of the opinion that he could at least mate once or twice a week while continuing his research. With the world on the brink of destruction, having someone he's in love with as a reason to not mate is just not good enough. But she also appreciates that no normal man could do that. He has the same desires as the rest of them, but he's always fighting them off. Rito returns with the cake, but Ms. Taniguchi doesn't want it anymore and asks him if he'll really never have kids. He says he might someday if it will really help humanity, but that doesn't mean he'll give up on the girl he loves. She says she's tired and tells them to return the following day to listen to her talk about old times. That night, while she's talking to Arisa, she tells her she wouldn't be at fault for giving up on saving the world to be with the man she loves. However, she refuses that even if he falls for someone else, she'll love him forever. A stranger poisons Ms. Taniguchi and her condition worsens overnight. It's doubtful that she'll survive since she's in a coma. According to her instructions, a nurse hands Rito a picture frame of Ms. Taniguchi and her husband. They all leave her in the nurse's care. Sui, Kuroda, and Rito arrive at the hospital where Ms. Taniguchi's husband was brought after he was first infected. The place where Japan's pandemic started, Kaiman Hospital's Ward Number 3. They go inside and find the building dark and completely abandoned. Sui is scared out of her mind. Ghosts are the only thing that scares her, and insists that she wants to go home. Rito finds it amusing that after all there is something that scares her even though she's so strong. It's still in the middle of the day, so she'll be fine. They search the place but don't see anything that can be a clue so far or find out how he was infected. They still don't know where he was or what he was doing before it started. Rado asks if the infected appeared all around the world at the same time, right? He looks out the window and sees some people, so he wonders if this is a refugee camp as well, and if the leaders of the yahello are only interested in what happens at the core. Kuroda says they are doing their best to bring back the rest of the men who are in cold sleep. But are they really? Meanwhile, Hino is having the time of his life. He has 3 bear girls pining for him. As Rika feeds him a strawberry, he thinks about how his life has really turned around because earlier he could never imagine her, the most popular girl at his old part-time job, to be willing to feed him like that. He's so happy, but the other girls are jealous. One of them tries her best to gain his attention and make him drink wine from her mouth through a kiss. Kitayama also joins in the fun since none of them wants to feel left out, and Hino assures them he'll satisfy them all. But during all of this, he thinks to himself that he's happy, but when it's the same thing every day, he does get bored and wants something new. Akane approaches Rei-A, who's in the hot springs, and says it would do their relationship good to spend some time bare together. They haven't had a chance to talk lately. Rei-A is of the opinion that she's barbaric, but Akane says they're both girls so they don't have anything to hide. Rei-A insists that if she has something to say, she should get to the point or she's leaving. Akane says she looked at Taniguchi's medical records and the logs of her life support device, and the way the numbers changed made no sense. This can only mean somebody poisoned her. Rei-A says that if that is true, it's a serious concern and they should investigate it, but Akane is not done. She takes Rei-A's hand, pulls her back into the water, and pins her against the rocks on the side of the spring. She confronts Rei-A, asking her what she was doing that night, and Rei-A says she was just writing her report to her bosses since she needs to tell them what Rito is doing. Akane also asks if she was accompanied by someone, but Rei-A says she was all alone and that she doesn't have the right to question her like this either. Rei-A observes that Akane seems too concerned about Director Kihara, and Akane stops in her tracks. Kuroda and Rei-A return the photo frame to Rito after scrutinizing it for bacteria and making sure there's nothing unusual about it. He wonders why Taniguchi wanted him to have this. Suddenly, he remembers Arisa's ring band and wonders if it has something to do with this. They are all on the train and they pass by high school. Kuroda mentions this is where her little sister goes to school. She's much younger than her and they don't live together much, but she's very smart and skipped several grades to get to the next school. Rito suggests they should meet her while they're here, but Kuroda refuses, saying she's probably busy with all her studying. Karen is standing outside the school and Yuzuki asks her what's wrong, but she doesn't respond and says it's time for them to go. Meanwhile, Naneko makes arrangements for Hino to go outside in a vehicle with tinted windows. He's ecstatic because it's great for him to go outside and pick a girl by himself for the first time. He thanks her for the idea and she's glad he likes it. Hino tells the driver to stop the car when he sees a girl in pigtails holding a kid's hand. He says he loves her smile and that he would like to mate with her. It's totally not Mahiru. He says she's a little young, but they need to hurry or they'll lose her. Rito locks himself inside the bathroom and finds Ms. Taniguchi's frame and Arisa's ring respond to each other. Suddenly, the hologram of paper opens in front of him, revealing how to make the M-key virus. He realizes this is the secret information Arisa was talking about in her message, but he can't understand why Taniguchi might have it. He wonders if she didn't tell the Yugari about her husband because she wanted to protect this information. Somebody calls up to Rado telling him the train is here, and he decides to use and understand this information to make the cure. Rito runs back to all the girls waiting for him at the station, and he can't decide who to trust. 2 girls are making out with each other when suddenly Rei-A arrives and tasers the one on top since she is being forceful with the other one. The other girl is Rei-A's sister, and she asks if she's doing okay. She says she's fine but complains about how Rei-A hasn't come to see her in so long. Rei-A says she's been busy and her sister knows it's because she has to take care of Rado. Knowing Rei-A, she thought she had moved on with some pretty Yugari girl, even she doesn't think a man would take her. But Rei-A quietens her and asks for a favor. The next day, Rito checked out the paper on making the M-key virus, but some of the data was damaged and he couldn't recreate it immediately. But there's a limit to what he can do on his own and needs other researchers to help him. He's walking with Kuroda and asks her why research on the MK virus is going so slowly because there's barely any information on the development of a vaccine or even an antiviral. She gets quite enthusiastic saying she wants to research it more, but they don't allow her to go beyond a certain point since the technical director says they need to focus their resources on food production. She also says that it's not like there's no research data on the vaccine. It's just that they are not given access. Moreover, all the major researchers are at the UW headquarters in America. The people at the top of the UW, the world's rulers, are gathering virologists, pharmacologists, and high-end AI experts from all over the world to conduct this research. Kuroda understands that with limited resources, it makes sense to centralize things, but they have men who are up and moving now. So obviously Japan needs more researchers now. Rado asks if they can at least bring back the Japanese researchers, and Kuroda says she's already asked her bosses a number of times. However, their conversation is interrupted by Neneko, who wants to ask him something important. She tells him and Mahiru that Hino wants her as a mating partner, but Mahiru says she can't even imagine doing something so naughty with a man she's never met. Rita thinks it's too soon because she's just 16, and Rie says non-consensual mating is against the rules, so it won't happen even if number one wants it. Neneko knows Hino won't give up so easily, so she wants them both to tell him directly. Once Rito tells Hino that he doesn't want him to go ahead with this, Hino practically begs him to let him meet her, who knows they might hit it off. Rito tries to tell him she doesn't want to, but he begs saying they could just have a drink and talk. This guy sure has a hard time taking no for an answer. After a lot of begging, Rito agrees and says he'll ask her, and Hino says he's the most understanding guy and calls him his brother. Rito says he's not his brother and he can't promise him anything either, but that's more than enough for Hino. He walks away happily with his arm around Rito, saying they're brothers forever. All Rito can think of is how fast things got so weird. Neneko and Rhea report this to the UW heads. They also discuss some other matters about how there was a small fight between a security patrol and the refugees in Area 15. They discuss how these fights have increased, and even though this one was calmed down before it turned into a riot, they need a large-scale solution. More groups are starting to oppose UW in other countries, and they need to do something. The technical minister thinks they're just too soft on them, and someone objects saying it's because there aren't enough rations. The Secretary of Civil Affairs tells her to stop doing her weird research and make some high-nutrition food. Kihara, the Minister of State, tells them it's no good for them to be fighting among themselves at this point since someone from HQ is going to visit them soon. Ria suggests they should use number 2 to distribute rations, as it will also help the people calm down. They all agree that it's the only way. He is the most popular person in the world right now, and Kihara tells them to make sure security is tight. Rito is in the shower when he is suddenly joined by a very bare Ikana and Kuroda, surprisingly. They ask for his forgiveness as they turn the shower on and whisper to him that he's being watched. This is the only way for them to speak to him and have a little bit of privacy. Akane asks Rito if he has some kind of information about the MK virus and tells him that she knows he's been looking into it outside the lab as well. She tells him he should be aware that what he's doing is extremely dangerous and he could be killed. He asks by whom, and she thinks it's quite obvious. Yep, all the UBA ladies. For many years, talented virologists have been vanishing one after another, and they don't even know if they are alive. Is that why Ursa? Kuroda tells him that Akane doesn't believe in the directors. Akane continues by telling him that the leader of UBA's Japan branch, the National Affairs Director, Kihara, is her mother. Ryuzoji is her father's name, who divorced her mother while she was still little. Suddenly, she hugs Rito when they hear someone come in. It's Ria saying she's here to talk about ration distribution and asks what the three of them are doing. Akane tells her it's obvious that they are making sure he's healthy or not. She's just come in and spoiled the fun. She walks away in disgust, and Akane asks him if he's going to visit the refugee areas. He agrees and says they told him it would pacify the people if he were to go out and distribute rations, so he agreed. He asks if he's made a mistake, but Akane says it's a good opportunity. Mira is brushing her hair in her room when Ria enters and hugs her from the back, calling her so innocent and beautiful. She knows that Mira knows how she feels about her. Ria has loved her since school, but Mira tells her to stop it since she's not her girlfriend. Ria walks away, promising to make her forget about that man soon. No wonder she hates all men. Once they arrive at the refugee camps, Kuroda and Sue guide Rito to a room where Akane is already present. She asked them to make sure they were not followed by Ria, but she was busy distributing rations. Soi is afraid because the room is dark and looks like a ghost could appear there. Rito assures her it's fine and commends their idea of making a secret hideout in the refugee area. Akane is certain that yahello won't find them here. Kuroda can access external networks that are blocked off inside the yahello facility as well. Akane tells him he shouldn't trust the directors or Katajuri Ria since they're only interested in controlling this country. The crowd of women is overjoyed to see Rito distributing rations. However, some stand on the side and don't like how popular he is and all the attention he's receiving. They don't seem to like the yahello much either because they can see through their attempts to shut them up with some food and a man. These women are certain that the yahello is keeping all the food and men to themselves. One of them considers leaving town, but her friend asks where she would go. She answers that she has a friend on the Sea of Japan side. Meanwhile, the other women are ecstatic to see Rito, including those who saw him out on the street on his first day. Rito is happy to hear that, but Kuroda asks Ria how much longer this will take. Looks like there's a lot more food left to distribute. Suddenly, Ria's eyes fall on a distant sniper aiming for Rito's head, but she's taken care of by Ria's sister, who apologizes for not being able to take the attacker alive. She scanned her face but was unable to find anything in the yahello database. Ria says she's pretty sure she knows who it is, and she has some friends watching the area so there don't seem to be any more threats. She thanks her sister for being on the lookout. Her sister thinks Ria is taking too much care of Rito. Did she perhaps fall in love with him? Ria says she doesn't like him, but if he gets hurt it will make someone she loves very sad. It's totally not obvious she's talking about Mira. Meanwhile, Hino drinks with Mahiru in Rito's presence. He seems to be boring her with some story about how nobody ended up going to his concert. They start thinking that the band should break up. He asks her what kind of music she likes, but she says she doesn't listen to music. Rika takes away their plates even though Hino says he's not done. Anyone can tell she's writhing in jealousy. One of the girls in Hino's personal harem talks about shifting to Rito since Hino seems infatuated with Mahiru, but Rika tells him that's not possible since he hasn't made it with anybody yet. Kiriyama and the other girl judge Mira for her appetite as she calls Rika to serve her another helping of food. Mahiru walks away saying she has something important to do, and Rita runs after her saying sorry that she had to sit through this. Hino still can't wrap his head around the fact that he's been rejected. Rito and Kuroda are in their private hideout and he can't believe they've managed to find such an old computer. After all, it's the only way they can escape yahello's prying eyes by using the old underground network. Rito is surprised to hear of an underground network. He didn't know Kuroda had hacking skills either. And she says a friend from her college was into it and taught her a lot, but she's in America now. Akane joins them in a monster face mask to hide her identity, but ends up standing out even more. That night, while Hino takes a shower after penetrating 3 girls, Kiriyama joins him and says she understands his feelings regarding Mahiru. He tells her that's not true and hugs her tight. Kuroda finds a record of Kawakami Ryona in Kaiman City's Central Hospital No. 3. Her friend who she just said was supposed to be in America, but is hospitalized here. She searches some more and finds the names of all her friends who are supposed to be researchers in America, but have instead gone missing in abandoned hospitals. All the girls with any talent or knowledge have gone missing in the hospital where the MK virus first appeared. Rito thinks the hospital might have been the place where the virus was developed. Doi lies awake at night thinking of what Karen said about this whole school being made specifically for him. He can't believe someone would go to such lengths for him. Ichiju notices he's awake and hugs him, but she's sad that her time as his roommate is almost over, so she ends up kissing him. However, he turns her down saying he's not in the mood today, and Ichiju apologizes for disturbing him. Doi goes outside where he encounters Karen, who asks him where he's going. Doi says he's out for some fresh air. That has to be allowed, doesn't it? But Karen says he's not allowed to leave the grounds. He asks if he has to live here forever, and she tells him he's more precious than anyone else in this world, so that might be a good idea. However, she admits she's just joking when she sees his horrified face and says he can leave once he graduates. She takes him back to his room and tells him to have a fun night with Ichiju since he'll be getting a new roommate soon. Karen wishes him good night and walks away. The next day in class, Karen makes an announcement and says that the next winner will be Doi's roommate. Akira wants to win, but Shifuyu is confident it will be her, the poor delusional girl. Karen makes them pick lots from a box, and the winning one has a circle on it. Shifuyu goes first and ends up picking a cross. Shunka goes next, but she loses too. While Ichiju wishes she could participate, Doi doesn't like being treated like a prize. His attention is drawn back to class when he sees a beautiful girl who has won the draw. He's in the bathroom thinking about how he's not good around girls who act like her when she shows up there too. She tries to seduce him by showing off her body and saying she can't wait until tonight, but the bathroom brings Doi flashbacks of all the times he was bullied there, so he runs away. Karen holds her head as she sees the girl run after him. Doi enters the teacher's office, a room he hasn't been to since he woke up from a cold sleep, and he realizes how long it's been since he came here, even though it doesn't feel that long for him. He always hid here when things got difficult. Suddenly, Shunka enters the room, and they both ask each other what they're doing here. She tells him to sit down, and he asks her if she was the one who put up the keys poster in here. Shunka realizes this used to be his spot, and this makes her happy for some reason. Shunka confronts him about the marks she saw on his body while he was in his swimming trunks at the pool. Doi admits that he was bullied pretty hard, and a person whom he thought was his friend pretended he saw nothing. Doi wipes his eyes and is surprised to see Shunka bare her melons, only to reveal her bruises and scars from when she was also bullied in middle school. But she's made friends ever since she got here. Sometimes she does remember that past, and it hurts her to be around other people, so she comes in here to just sit or listen to music, and it helps her forget the bad things. Doi relates to her and says she has nothing to worry about since he was the same way. Shunka gets serious all of a sudden and asks Doi to show her his bruises. She unbuttons his shirt and they end up kissing each other as she exposes her melons and tells him to touch her melons. He doesn't waste a second as he starts licking her body all over, performing his little magic spell to make the bruises better. Shunka begs for more spells for the rest of her body as she pulls her skirt up and Doi licks her down there. She admits she's really happy since it's the first time she's ever had someone touch her so gently. So she ends up offering him her whole body to touch as she takes off her peach protectors and they do the deed. That night, Doi returns to his room with Shunka, who asks if it's alright for her to do so. Doi finds the girl from earlier today sitting on her bed as she demands to know who the other girl is. She'll be disappointed to find out she's the other girl. Doi introduces Shunka as a girl from their class, but she already seems to know that and wants to know what she's doing here. She asks Doi if he knows her name, but it seems to upset her more that he doesn't. She is Rika, who's clearly upset now as she tries to remind Doi she won this fairly. Shunka says in the end it's Doi's decision. Rika talks about how hurt she is that Doi doesn't even remember her name and has yet to bring another girl to his room. Seeing the tension between them, she can see clearly that the two of them are already doing it, so she starts to strip, saying it won't hurt if he did it with her once. Shunka immediately gets defensive and asks the girl to stop being vulgar around her Doi. Rika fights back, saying he doesn't belong to her and reminds her that she's the one who broke the rule by screwing him first. Shunka argues that there's love and care between them, not rules. At this point, Rika is pulling at Shunka's cheeks, asking when did the two of them develop such a relationship, and she loves him too, but Shunka says she's just won the lottery. Doi's not used to having any girls fight over him, so he runs away saying he's going on a walk. While he's on his own, he really can't believe they would be fighting over him and wishes he could see Yuzu. He calls her, but she doesn't answer, so he wonders if she's mad because he's been sleeping with other girls, but in his situation he really doesn't know what to do. Just then he comes across Akira, who's on her night run, and she asks if it's fun being roommates with Yanaji. Doi says it's exhausting to share a room with someone he barely knows, but he can't help being distracted by her massive melons and muscular thighs. She asks about the bruise on his forehead that she caused, and he says even though the scar is gone, it still hurts a little at night. Akira feels so bad she immediately bows in front of him, saying she's really sorry and that she'll do anything to make it up to him. He remembers Karen saying none of the girls dislike him, so he brazenly asks Akira to roll up her shirt. She seems shocked, so he tries to cover for it by saying he was just joking. However, when she follows through with the instructions, he takes her bazookas in his hands and enjoys how big and soft they are, just like marshmallows. Doi doesn't know what's gotten into him as he pulls his hands away and apologizes. He says goodnight and runs away. The next day, while Akira is scrubbing the gym floors, Doi walks over to her because he feels so bad about what he did to her yesterday. He says he's sorry because she was worried about him and he ended up taking advantage of her. Akira asks if he can make it up to her by cleaning the gym equipment with her. Well, Akira ends up locking them both inside the gym locker room and sits on top of him as she starts to kiss him. Doi can't believe what's going on, and Akira apologizes for being a little rough, but she can't wait anymore. She ties his hands and feet as she starts to take off her clothes, and Doi asks Akira what's gotten into her. She says it's his fault because she's been waiting for so long. Poor Doi tries to stop the dominant woman with huge melons, but it really doesn't work. Akira asks if he hates her, but he says he doesn't. If that's not the case, she doesn't see any reason to stop as she goes down on him. She says her head has been full of him ever since class and practice, and even during her running time. She's having a really hard time controlling herself, and they end up doing it as well. Once it's over, Akira apologizes again and again as Doi puts his clothes back on. He didn't really mind, but he just felt a little awkward. Yanaji temporarily stopped being his roommate, and though she argued with Karen a lot about this, nothing seemed to work in her favor because Doi didn't feel like mating with her. He just said he was tired and she was asked to leave. This is the first time that Doi slept alone in ages. The next day, Karen decides that having one roommate for a week is a long time, so from now on, Doi is going to have a girl assigned to him each day. She says Yanaji is first since she made her quit being his roommate, so it's only fair that she gets to go first. Yanaji hugs Karen and tells her how nice she is. Doi is still confused and asks what's going on, and Karen explains that his attendant will be one who will take care of him during the school day because there will be times when she can't personally be with him. Since his roommate is there for a week, she basically wants to increase the turnover rate and wants him to be closer to all the girls at school. Moreover, she tells him to give his assigned girl a kiss each morning. He asks why, and Karen states, as a reward of course, for taking care of him. Yanaji comes up to Doi asking for her reward, but he turns her down again. Karen says she's sorry for not realizing Doi might still be embarrassed. She orders everyone else to turn around while Yanaji kisses him, saying she thought he didn't like her, so she's really happy they got this opportunity. She asks if she can have another kiss, but at this point, Doi is so nervous he gets up and declares he's going to the bathroom. However, just as he's leaving, he trips and falls down, managing to scrape his palms a little. Karen says she should go to the nurse's office, but he insists it's okay, and she's just making a big deal out of nothing. Karen refuses to hear another word and takes him along since he is humanity's treasure. The nurse examines Doi and says she might be able to help him get rid of his old bruises as well. She says she'd like to give him a full body scan and tells him to lie down on the bed. He doesn't understand why everyone is exaggerating this so much because he's just scraped his hands, but she reasons that humanity's finished if something were to happen to him. He asks if that's true, and the nurse says of course he would have a hard time believing something like that. However, right now he's so turned on that it's hard for him to really focus on anything. The nurse tells him he's all done, and Doi comments about how big the bed is, and she asks if he knows why. Karen asks Doi if he's fine, and he says he is, but she says there's still a part of him that requires attention. Thus, she presents Shunka, Akira, and Ichiju to help him feel better. Doi argues that his scrape is already gone, but Ichiju just tells him not to worry about it. Karen says it sounds like Yanaji assigned a girl to do this, but it's still her first day, so they'll just use the 3 girls who are already close to him. Karen instructs the 3 of them to take care of Doi on behalf of not only the entire school, but every woman on Earth, and she leaves. Ichiju asks Doi what they can do for him to help heal his injuries. Shunka says she knows how as she climbs on top of him and licks his chest. Soon after, Ichiju and Akira strip, and the 3 of them start making out, his very first threesome. He moans really loudly, and the girls tell him to be quiet or they'll get caught. Shunka says she's the best at pleasing him, but Ichiju suggests they should discuss it properly and set an order. Akira thinks it's okay as it is, but Shunka finally recommends rock, paper, scissors. Ichiju is up first, and she thoroughly enjoys herself, saying it's been so long since she's been with him. She struggles to contain herself and spills all over him. Shunka is up next and tells Doi he needs to hold on firmly until it's her turn, and Akira agrees as the 3 girls continue to pleasure him. Karen thinks to herself that Doi is doing well taking on 3 girls at once, considering the fact that he lost his virginity not more than a month ago. She's discussing this with another girl, Hoshino Shien, one of Doi's old classmates, and thinks it's time for them to move to the next stage. All 3 girls lie on Doi's bed, passed out from exhaustion. Looks like class is over. Doi comes across Chifyu in the science lab where she's concocting a love potion which she's certain will make him fall in love with her. He catches her in the act and asks what kind of experiment she's doing. She's taken by surprise and tells him it's rude to spy on people and show up unannounced. He apologizes, saying he heard a voice, so he just walked in. She asks if he's okay after his fall and proceeds to call Karen stupid. because in her opinion it would have been so much better if she had let Shifu take care of Doi instead. She suddenly realizes he doesn't have an assigned roommate for this week and asks if he wants to pick her. Act now, and she says she'll say yes. Doi starts to wonder what it is about him that Shifu likes, and she has no trouble answering that she likes his face. Doi starts laughing, and so she asks if he's had slept with so many useless women that it has fried his brain. He's just laughing at the way she said face outright and thinks there's a better way he could have worded that. She adds that she likes that he doesn't seem stupid and is kind enough to care for all the idiotic girls in their class. However, she's really pissed and asks Doi if she's not enough, and is it because of her family's average bust size, but hers will eventually grow pretty big. Doi bends down and kisses her forehead as he thanks her for saying all those nice things that boosted his confidence. She thinks it's her time to shine since he's finally realized how great she is and wants to mate with him. However, he tells her she needs to wait until she's a little older, and she calls him a fool because there's no girl as psychologically mature as her. She also says she'll ask her sister who lives in the core to let her use one of their growth machines. Shifu runs away telling him when she'll grow up he will fall in love with her, but it will be too late by then. She sure is energetic. Later, Karen comes to Doi with a message about Yuzuki saying she's transferring schools due to family reasons. She's no longer in Kiyomon City and Karen can't tell him why. Doi is clearly distraught since this is so sudden, and neither did Yuzu say anything to him either. He asks Karen to bring her back, but she says it's just not possible and won't be for a year or two. Doi is in pure rage at this moment since he blames Karen because she's responsible for surrounding him with people he likes. Karen assures him he'll see her again someday, but he wants to see her now. He realizes that in the end, he is a bird in a cage. Doi asks to sleep alone that night, and he lays in bed thinking of how he really loved her. But it looks like the rage has increased his drive as he passionately kisses his assigned girl the next morning and wonders if this crazy school is driving him crazy. The next morning, Karen introduces a new transfer student, Hoshino Shien. Doi has a flashback, traumatic memory in which he was playing football with the boys and they were gossiping about Shien. One of the boys says Shien, a girl from their class, is so cute and it's hard to believe that she doesn't have a boyfriend. Another boy says it's her dream to be a famous entertainer one day. The first boy asks his friends if they think she'll date him, but they seem to believe he doesn't have a chance. The boy is still persistent and says he'd love to screw her at least once. Doi was listening to the entire conversation and thought to himself, they are disgusting for having that kind of mentality. In another flashback, Doi is being bullied again. The poor boy is already on the floor and Takamatsu is kicking Doi like a football and says he scored a goal. He complimented himself and said he won a goal with a perfect kick. Another boy then complimented Takamatsu that he could be a soccer player for real. He turns to his friend and tells him to do a drop kick on Doi, but he says there aren't any drop kicks in soccer. Takamatsu says then he can become a pro wrestler because no football player is as fat as him. Everyone including Erika stands and laughs at Doi while he's on the ground. Just then, Shien enters the roof with her friends talking about what the agency said to her, and sees Doi in a pitiful situation, but all she says is that she's hungry. Her friend suggests that they should leave, but Shien asks why it matters because what's important to her is that she wants to eat here. After this, all the boys bullying do decide to get back at torturing him, this time especially in front of Shien while she laughs. In the present, Doi recalls it as a really nasty thing to remember. All of a sudden, Shien approaches him and talks about how long it has been since they've seen each other and how much the world has changed since then. Nowadays, not a lot of girls get to be entertainers, and she begs for his help while holding his hands. Even though they weren't that close, they were classmates after all. Doi is surprised by Shien's attitude and asks if they told her about this school. Finding the situation to be in his favor, he takes advantage and asks her to strip. Shien is really surprised and can't believe her ears. She asks if he's joking, and Doi says it was obviously a joke, but she can't expect him to help her after everything. And he walks away. Shunka and Ichiju are talking in the school corridor. Shunka suggests Ichiju should watch the space chapter too. She asks if it's really that good, but just then Shien arrives and asks the girls for help. She says she really needs their help as she asks them about Doi and his likes and dislikes. Shunka asks Shien why she's asking them, and she says it's because Karen told her they are close to him. Shunka is quite rude to Shien and says she's not sure what to tell her, and Ichiju is particularly hostile because she asks Shien what she's doing here when she's already over 23 years old and refuses to see her as a classmate. They leave her standing there, but Akira is close by, so she explains to Shion that in a way all the girls here are rivals. But even though she, Shunka, and Ichiju are rivals, they're also friends who know and look out for each other. Since she's not one of their friends, nobody is going to help her. Doi sits in class with Karen, and she comments about how things are going so well. Doi asks her if she's the one who brought Hoshino here, and she says she was the one who asked to be transferred here. Doi asks how that was possible when she's probably already 23, and Karen says there aren't any such strict rules regarding age. Shion wanted to be an entertainer, but there's much less demand for them in the industry now that there are no men around. Even though there are TV shows on the UW public TV station, it's still really hard to be an idol or actress. It would be pretty tough for a new girl to get her to start at that age. Karen then asks Doi to mate with her since it would really help her out. Doi asks how that would work, and Karen responds by saying that if she's part of his harem, then UW directors will want to work with her. Doi thinks that's why Shion is so desperate for his help. She doesn't like him and she just wants work. He also thinks he couldn't enjoy himself if she wasn't into it. Karen thinks Doi should put Shion to the test to see just how serious she is. Doi asks Karen what kind of test, but she just waves over to Shion. Now Karen and Doi have made an awkward situation for Shion. The next day, Shion is standing in the school corridors with just a shirt and her silly silks on. She feels really embarrassed and tells Karen she's done what she asked. Karen is of the opinion that an entertainer needs to attract attention after all. Karen asks Shion to attend school tomorrow in just her underwear, top and bottom. Then Doi might be willing to help her out a little. Obviously, Shion is angry and screams back at them because how is it fair that they are the ones who get to boss her around and tell her what to do? Karen is really smug as she replies that's because she's Doi's personal attendant. On the roof, Doi makes it clear that Shion knows she's making a deal with him. If Shion will let Doi sleep with her, he'll talk to the UW about getting her a job. After hearing this proposal, she's quite happy and suggests they should head back to the dorms, but suddenly 3 other girls enter the roof. Doi declares they should get started. Shion is embarrassed and confused. What does he mean, let's get started? At least he should get a room. However, Doi insists he wants to do it here, and Shion remembers how she had insisted she wanted to eat on this very roof and watch while Doi got bullied. Doi asks her what's wrong when she is the one who comes to him for help in finding a job. Shion doesn't say anything, she's too embarrassed and takes off the already minimal underwear she was wearing. Shion immediately drops to her knees while she covers her melons with her hands. Doi realizes she's still a bedroom beginner and promises to be gentle with her. Doi proceeds to glide along those peaks, and then makes her stand against the railing. He asks if she's glad she found him here, but Shion admits this is nothing but embarrassing. Later that night, Doi and Karen are together and she asks him how it went. Doi says this school is pretty awesome and she's happy to hear that. However, she believes it can still get crazier if he wants to. Doi can't imagine what can get crazier than this and thinks she's joking. In her opinion, Doi is too much of a gentleman and could be a little more perverted. She says she knows there are some things he wants to try, but he's hiding it. Doi says there isn't any such thing, but Karen says they will give him anything as long as it doesn't involve him leaving the school. Doi asks what if he wants to do it with her, and Karen says she'll do anything he wants. Doi finally thinks of something and tells Karen there's someone he wants to bring here. Karen wonders who that might be. Meanwhile, Rado and his friends are present at their secret hideout, and Kuroda says so many women with skills and talent are disappearing from the hospital where Taniguchi, the first MK virus victim in Japan, was taken. Rito said this may be going a little far. The hospital may be where the MK virus was manufactured. Kuroda is shocked and asks what he means. She says that if the virus was artificially created, then the reason that they haven't been able to find out where it came from is because it was manufactured here. Akane suggests that if the virus leaked from there, then maybe if they go there, they might be able to find some clues. Rito thinks maybe he can recreate the MK virus production data. Back in school, Doi is measuring Akira's bust, and shockingly, it is 94 cm, which is still 2 centimeters larger than last year. Akira says it's all thanks to Doi. Now Doi starts to measure her waist, and it's 63 cm, so the nurse comments about how it's so nice and tight. She says her hips are next, and the tension between Doi and Akira starts to grow. He asks if that's really necessary, and the nurse assures him it's essential. Thus he does as he's told and ends up measuring her hips at 92 centimeters. The nurse says her measurements are the perfect width for childbearing. Akira thanks Doi and walks away. The nurse tells Doi there are still 15 girls left, and it's much easier this year since she has his help. Doi thinks she's joking because she could do these measurements instantly using a machine. The nurse agrees but says Doi knows the real reason they're making him do this, just to give him a chance to touch the girls and understand the shape of their bodies. She laughs and remembers Karen telling her Doi is smart. The nurse bends over on the bed and tells Doi he can use it if he wants to. It takes everything he has in his power to not look at her. Karen apologizes to Doi since his request took so long, but she's finally managed to fulfill it. Doi says it's okay because it's quicker than he expected. Karen tells him Doi has access to all kinds of information. Thus, she presents Erica, who was having trouble earning a living, so now she's working a part-time job as a janitor at her alma mater. Doi says hi to her and that it's been a while, but she seems unremorseful as she still calls him Doji. He asks if she's a little too old for this ridiculous uniform she's weaning, but Erica says he won't get away with this. Karen reminds Erica of her place in this scenario, and surprisingly Erica apologizes. Karen says that as Doi can see, she's tamed Erica for him a little bit and leaves them to have fun. Doi remembers every time she and Takamatsu bullied him, so he picks up her bucket of mop water and throws it on her face. She starts to call him Doji again and uses all kinds of abusive words, but he grabs her by the collar telling her not to call him that. Moreover, Erica announces that if he tries to force intimate relations with her, she'd rather bite off her own tongue and die. Doi says she's got it wrong because he's not going to mate with her. He proceeds to take off his pants and drag her into the bathroom by the chain that's on her collar. He sits on the toilet and shows her the bruises where her boyfriend used to hit her and says that they hurt sometimes. He tells her to do something to make the pain go away and asks her to lick them. With her hands in cuffs, Erica isn't left with much of a choice as Doi laughs maniacally. Karen reports Doi's progress back to the UW secretary, and she's surprised that Doi's mating progress has almost caught up with number 1. Karen asks her if his teacher is doing fine, and her boss assures her Yuzu-sensei is alright. She also instructs Karen to keep sending over any of the women who get pregnant. Karen suggests it would be faster to just construct a lab here. She fails to realize that they can't build labs as easily as they did before. Karen also asks why number 2 is doing, and the Secretary of Civil Affairs says he's the same as ever. It'd be best to just hand him to UW World. Karen also asks what happened about the messenger from World HQ, but looks like they are not here yet. Karen asks if World HQ might have an informant because the secretary is suspicious of the Minister of Technology since she formerly worked for World HQ. Karen asks if they're really safe here, but her boss suggests it's probably safest to not make any moves and not to worry since the school is really well safeguarded. Karen announces to the class that she's not feeling enough desperation from the girls. If any of them wants to be Doi's first or even second wife, they have got to show more desperation. That will be their position in the hierarchy for the rest of their lives, so they should definitely start working harder. Nothing at this school really makes sense, so they should just enjoy it while it lasts. Ichiju is irritated by Doi kissing his assigned girl for the day non-stop and announces that class is about to start. Now Doi is at the swimming pool and Ichiju asks if he's going to get in the water. Doi says he's tired, and Ichiju points out she was probably busy doing some other forms of exercise all night. Guilty as charged, Doi had been thinking about which girl to pick for tonight. She shows him her swimsuit and purposely stretches the fabric over her melons to show him how good her stuff is. Suddenly, Ichiju cuts off Doi's swim trunks, so the poor boy has nowhere to hide. She asks Doi to get inside Akira's swimsuit since she's tall and might be able to hide Doi's not-so-private parts. Now both Doi and Akira are in the same suit. Her huge melons are touching Doi's chest, and the tension between them starts increasing. For some reason, they think it would be a good idea to enter the swimming pool. However, by this time everyone else is gone, and Ichiju picks up Doi's hand and places it on her melons. The three of them end up doing it several times in the pool and having some intense makeout sessions. That night, Doi picks another girl, Yanaji, and sleeps with her in some random street around plants. After that, he picks 2 more random girls from school for the night, and Doi wonders if it is all a dream or reality because he is enjoying it so much. Man has really been deprived of female attention. The next day, he picks up another girl from school and asks her to come to his room. Once she enters, she notices Erica already inside, but she's tied and cuffed like a pet. Doi asks Erica if her boyfriend Takamatsu died of the MK virus or if he is in a cold sleep. Erica says she doesn't know, but Doi says he really doesn't care if Takamatsu is alive or dead. He's just really happy that the world has changed. Erika is furious and frustrated as she asks Doi why he's mad about something that happened 5 years ago and that he should just get over it already. He grabs her from her mouth and tells her that it was 5 years ago for you, but for him, it's not. Now Doi throws the second girl on the bed and strips her bare as he grabs her melons and starts licking her face. He compliments her, saying she is so cute, and he had never seen or felt something as smooth as her skin. Doi starts making out with that girl and doing all sorts of perverted things with her, but she's just embarrassed because Erika is present there. Late at night, Erika was not feeling good, so she asked Doi for medicine. He says he knows she used to be a drug addict in the slums, so she should probably get that treated soon. So he put the tablet in his mouth and asked her to come get it. Erika was so desperate that she kissed Doi for the tablet. A woman flies on a private jet and tells someone she'll be in Japan by tomorrow. She also talks about how Mizuhara Rito's worldwide broadcast showed everyone how there's at least one man with resistance to the MK virus, and World HQ in America wants him immediately. She's speaking to Chloe, who agrees that that's the order the world leadership has given, but she reveals that the Japan branch is hiding other men as well. This was revealed in their investigation, and the woman asks if that's the reason she's being brought here. Chloe agrees and tells her to stay sharp on her arrival. The Japanese UW discusses this newcomer as the messenger from UW World HQ and doesn't know much about her except her last name, which they think is Mansfield. Kihara also discusses the Peacekeeping Activities Bureau, an official organization that monitors potential threats to the UW's leadership. The Minister of Technology says that according to the rumors, they shut down the terrorists in Australia and Canada by force. Shuto is concerned they might also search for Izanami, the terrorist organization, but Kihara says HQ wouldn't send a messenger just for that. No one can tell what they're planning. The Attorney General pulls up pictures of weird things surrounding Raito, like the bear attack at Arisa's old facility and the sniper who was found dead at the ration distribution. The Secretary of Civil Affairs has conducted some background research on Mansfield, which revealed that she is a former military and was promoted at incredible speed. The technical director chimes in, saying if there's one thing she's heard about Mansfield, it's not to mess with her. Kihara believes that with all the numbers in their possession, they have the initiative, so she tells everyone to stick to the plan. Doi walks into class and wishes everyone good morning. He picks a girl with a pixie cut for the day and kisses her passionately as he whispers in her ear to come to his room today. She apologizes, saying she's on her menstrual cycle, so Doi backs off. What a gentleman! Karen seems suspicious of this girl's behavior. In her room that night, Karen is attending a personal phone call when the Secretary of Civil Affairs calls her, informing her that the World HQ messenger she informed Karen earlier about is coming tomorrow. Karen says they're finally here and asks if she needs to do anything special. She doesn't have any specific instructions, nor does she have any news to report since everything is going great. The call disconnects and Karen wonders who is going to help her more if she joins them. That night, the new girl that Doi kissed this morning is outside playing with a cat. She's probably washed her mouth 100 times by now when she receives a phone call. The person apologizes for making her do the unpleasant stuff and asks if Doi forced himself on her. She says he didn't when she just waved him off. Anyways, the girl asks how things are going on her end and learns that the World HQ messenger will be here tomorrow. Looks like everyone is anticipating her arrival. The person she's talking to is Arisa, who says their plan will be in effect soon. Meanwhile, Doi enjoys making out with the Chiju, and she's ecstatic because she feels like it's been so long since he last took off her clothes. The two of them are in the girls' dorm bath, which is pretty exciting for her. Soon, they are welcomed by Akira and Shunka, who invite Doi to sit while they scrub him clean. He happily accepts. What idiot would say no to that offer? So the girls start rubbing their bodies against Doi, and Shunka complains about how she didn't get to join in at the pool last time, so she asks for a reward. Doi happily pleasures her using his fingers, and Ichiju suggests leaving the two of them alone to spend some quality time together. Later, the three of them are enjoying the hot sauna when Yanaji comes over rushing and jumps into the water, insisting that she wants to join them. She's slightly delusional and convinced that Doi was just using her as a way to have fun during the swimming race. Ichiju suggests they should all do it together. After that, Doi indulged himself in a very lustful urge with another girl in the library, in the nurse's office, and in the middle of class. Anything he wanted to do with a girl he did, and the things holding him back eventually began to break. Meanwhile, Reitu, Sui, Akane, and Kuroda explore the abandoned hospital in Kaiman City. Akane teases Sui about ghosts in the dark building, and she clings to Rito, who realizes that the directors are probably watching them. Kuroda has submitted paperwork to have Rito come here, and surprisingly they got permission easily enough. Akane declares they don't have time to waste since the secrets to humanity's survival might be here. She also ends up asking Rito how he feels about Mira since he obviously knows she's into him, right? Rito can't help but blush since he thinks she's a wonderful person. Akane asks if he's still a virgin, but when he doesn't respond she says she thought it was just his iron will. Sui tries to stand up for Rito and tells Akane not to bully him. But all Akane has to do is say moving corpse, which causes Sui to recoil in fear and land against a wall. Luckily, the wall collapses and reveals a secret passage. Rito consoles her and says it's okay because she scares him more than the ghosts. They discover an air duct that's big enough for a person to pass through. Director Kara greets Pope as she arrives in Japan thinking she's Ms. Mansfield. She clears this misunderstanding and says she's Chloe's aide and that Chloe is elsewhere, in a very important place in this country. The four of them crawl through the duct when they arrive at an opening that seems to be a very suspicious room that doesn't look like it belongs inside a hospital. However, things don't really go in their favor because four of them inside a duct with all the commotion was obviously not going to last long. They fall through the vent and encounter the technical director. Kuroda confronts her and asks if Rihanna and Hatsume and all the other girls are here as well. She also asks if this is the place where they made the M-Key virus. However, they're met with the response they probably should have expected. The technical director says she's always wanted to say this line, which is now that they've seen this place they won't be allowed to leave alive. However, before they can attack, Rito and his friends see them knocked down by soldiers, which really surprises them because it was quite unexpected that they would be saved in this situation. They're even more shocked to see Chloe enter behind the soldiers saying she's glad that she made it in time. Chloe bows in front of Rito saying that she's glad that they meet again and formally introduces herself as Chloe Mansfield from UW World Headquarters. Rito is surprised that she's from UW World Headquarters, and she says yes as she remembers she had a lot of fun at the hot springs. Chloe further explains that she's in charge of the UW Department of Peacekeeping Operations. Rito is in awe of her position at her age. Ever since his big announcement, she pretended to be an exchange student to investigate the situation in Japan. That included what Rito and the 5 directors were up to. She suddenly remembers that her soldiers shot the technical director and that they need to treat her. She also didn't have much of a choice since she tried to kill Rito. Suddenly, they feel the ground shaking beneath them and Chloe tells them there's probably a bomb inside the facility and there's no time to disarm it, so they need to evacuate immediately. Chloe leads them to the exit and they make it to the helicopter just in time as the building explodes and the helicopter takes off. Akane is disappointed since they were so close to finding something on the M-Key virus. Meanwhile, at the school, all the girls are arguing over who's going to spend time with Doi, and they all wonder where Karen is so she can help them come up with a solution. Doi says he has an idea as he picks 4 girls and kisses them one by one and then all together. He then tells them to turn around and stand with their backs facing him. He enjoys this incredible view. Doi takes his time and penetrates each girl one by one. Karen is really surprised to see this through the window. Who could have imagined this 5 years ago when everyone bullied him and called him Doji? And now he has one hot girl after another lined up in front of him just as he pleases. None of this felt real when he first woke up from cold sleep, but now he has no doubt. This world is his paradise, and he intends to enjoy every second of it. Later that night, Karen catches Hoshino Shion trying to run away from the school, but she can't have Doi's snacks escaping now, can they? She wants to go back to Tokyo, but Karen says she'll let her go soon. Doi is slowly breaking out of his shell, and Karen is ecstatic about this. The helicopter is passing over the school currently, and Chloe asks Rito something she's been wondering about for a long time. If he's the only male who can survive in the outside world right now. Rito doesn't answer as he doesn't know if she knows about Hino and the other men yet. Chloe also doesn't know why the Japanese directors let him reveal his existence to the world without consulting or even informing them first. He asks her about the facility instead, but she says that someone as smart as him has probably figured out the answer to that question. Nevertheless, Chloe explains that the technical director is a bit of an oddball, and she seemed to be conducting some strange research in Kaiman City. At the same time, Pope confronts director Kihara and the other Japanese directors about this facility and believes that she was the one giving the orders. She also asks director Kihara about the other men who possess a resistance to the M-Key virus. Once confronted with their crimes, one of the directors calls the guards and they place Ms. Pope under arrest, as expected of supervillains. However, to all of their surprise, the guards point the guns at the Japanese directors as they say they are not their personal army and that they work for the Yudai. Just then, Director General Shuto stands up and Pope reveals that she has been reporting all their suspicious activity back to the Yudai. She's immediately branded a traitor by the rest of the Japanese directors. On behalf of Chloe Mansfield, Pope places the 3 directors under arrest for manufacturing and spreading the NK virus, ignoring orders from World Headquarters, violating their duty to report their activities, illegally exploiting the Japanese people. This list could go on forever. Kuroda realizes that they blew up the facility to cover up their tracks because that place was obviously where the MK virus was created. Chloe also believes that to be the obvious conclusion. Rito thinks if only they knew the virus-making process, it's quite possible that they could have made a cure. Chloe also believes this is possible, but she tells him the Japanese directors have been lying to them instead of helping him make a cure. Rito remembers how Arisa got in trouble. Chloe also tells him about the worldwide acts of terrorism because, with such a drastic decrease in the population, production has also decreased, creating huge gaps in economic wealth and widespread discontent. When Ms. Kihara revealed him to the world, it caused more terrorist attacks since the only known man was under the control of the Yudai. She also tells them all about Arisa Tachibana and reveals that she's currently working with a terrorist group that opposes Yudai rule. Rito is in disbelief and remembers a memory with Arisa while they were at a festival, and she suddenly got sad because she couldn't enjoy herself when she thought about children in certain parts of the world that didn't have access to good medicine. Rito reminds her that's why she's becoming a doctor in the first place and is always studying so hard. He really can't wait to meet her. At the same time, that night Doi walks into his room only to find Erika curled up on the floor. He thinks she's cute like this and covers her up with a blanket. Suddenly, there is an explosion at the school and Rito spots it from the helicopter. Kuroda identifies it as her sister's school. Chloe just receives a notification from one of her women that another man who is resistant to the MK virus has been kidnapped by the terrorists. Doi has a dream about Yuzu-sensei holding his face and telling him she thinks he's so smart and strong. Suddenly, he wakes up in a hospital in Kaiman City as a nurse helps him sit upright, and Karen is overjoyed to see him alive and well. The nurse asks how he feels, and he says he's alright. He remembers the explosion at the school, but the nurse interrupts because she's finished his checkup and announces that he's fine and even the injury on his back has healed. The nurses leave, telling Karine to call them immediately in case anything happens. Doi puts on his glasses and Karen asks him for forgiveness. It's really not like her to apologize, so Doi asks her to tell him what actually happened. Karen reveals that the terrorists tried to take him. They and the Yudai distribute resources for everybody in this world, but some people aren't happy that the Yudai is in charge. Doi finishes her sentence. Suddenly, Doi's personal harem of girls spills into the room as Shunka, Shiju, Chifu, and Akira all fall on top of each other. Doi is surprised to see the girls, and Karen explains that everyone was really worried for him. He apologizes for worrying them and asks if they are all okay, but they don't say a word and instead hug him all together. They are glad he's safe. That night, Doi stands with Karen under the stars and asks if it's okay for him to be outside since everyone is after him. Karen throws a napkin towards the fence beside her, and it turns out to be an electrical barrier. For some odd reason, this shocks Doi, and Karen explains they had such a barrier outside the school too. She figures they had a spy on the inside and apologizes to Doi. He says it's alright and is glad that nobody was really hurt. Karen says she thought he hated Erika with a smug expression on her face. Doi gets a flashback about how he covered Erika and protected her when he felt the bully rumble even though she was his former bully. He tries to cover and say it was just a reflex, that's all. She says he's a nice person, but his body is very important, so he should never try anything like that ever again or act like he doesn't care. Doi says he is important since he's the only guy in the world who's up and about at this moment. Looks like it's time for him to discover the truth. Karen starts to explain to him the existence of all the other numbers, and Doi finally finds out he's not the only one. There are 4 others. She also tells him 2 of them have not awoken yet, but they all suffered from cellular sclerosis. This statement still feels shocking to Doi, who's in disbelief about the existence of other men as he gets flashbacks of his bullies in high school. Karen thinks he's upset because they're in Doi's way. Anyway, she's planning to take Doi and leave Kaiman City soon and move to Tokyo. There's a Yudai World HQ messenger there right now and everything's a mess. But instead of waiting for them to decide their fate, Karen would rather jump right in and take the lead. Doi figures out she has ulterior motives and asks her what she's really after. Karen says someone as smart as him has probably already figured it out, but she'll just go ahead and tell him. Karen wants to be powerful and important. He asks if that means she wants to be the head of Japan yahello, but Karen says she wants to be number one in the whole world. It can't hurt to dream big, right? His eyes are wide in shock at her ambition, and Karen says that's why she wants him to be the number one man in the whole world. Karen says she's told this to him before, and that's why she thinks their interests are quite similar. Doi says he can hear her plan out later, but first he wants to know one thing first. He outright asks if she ever thought of being the first person to have his child. Karen forms an analogy to soccer to explain this to him, saying she knows all the rules and that she'd rather be the coach telling everyone what to do instead of being a player. If he wants to mate with her, she wouldn't be opposed to the idea, but she would also continue being his attendant even after she had a child with him. They shake hands as Doi agrees to help her in her ambitions. Meanwhile, the girl with the pixie cut calls Arisa and apologizes for failing to get number 3. Arisa says it's not her fault since it looks like they were watching out for them, but Arisa tells her not to take any more risks. The girl says she's leaving Kaiman City anyways and asks for an update on Arisa's situation. Arisa says they are currently in transport with the chamber of number 4 that they have obtained and plan to wake him, calling him their holy servant. The Minister of General Affairs, Shudo, informs Ria, Kuroda, and Mira that number 1 will temporarily be brought to their facility because of the increased intensity of the recent attacks. She tells them to make preparations immediately since his attendants will also be accompanying him. Ria, along with number 2 and Kuroda, his bodyguard and nurse, are already present here along with Mira. Ria questions why this is coming from Shudo and not the public welfare director, but she just says she'll explain the details later. Rito asks Chloe that the person who was kidnapped was the 4th man, and she agrees, saying that the terrorists took advantage of them coming to Japan and simultaneously attacked multiple facilities. If only the Japanese branch had told World HQ that there were 4 men besides Rito, they could have stopped them beforehand. Ria and Kuroda hang their heads in shame as Rito continues to question Chloe about what the terrorists want. She says they don't know for sure, but it's most likely a reaction to the tyranny of the Japanese branch. Ria is quick to defend her organization and says the Japan branch leaders aren't dictators, but Chloe just asks if that's the case, why are there terrorist attacks? Rito asks if Arisa is truly one of the terrorists, and Chloe says she is. She proceeds to show Rito a picture of Arisa in a suspicious hood, as she appears to be one of their leaders. Rito asks her what they should do now, and Chloe takes a moment to praise him. She says Rito is a remarkable man because he didn't blindly follow the orders from the Japan branch or help them out in their unethical mating. Chloe says number 1, Hino mated with many unfortunate women who practically had no right to refuse, but not Rito. Rito thought Hino didn't participate in any non-consensual mating. Chloe gets up and tells Rito she'll ensure his safety as she walks away. For some odd reason, Chloe is entirely bare as she reports this back to her superiors at UGOG. She tells them she has gained possession of all the numbers except 4, and the mating plans for number 1 and number 2 have been shut down. She knows number 3's location, and number 5 still remains in cold sleep at a local facility. Her boss understands Rito not mating but seems surprised that Hino also decided to stop mating. Chloe says he seemed unsatisfied and has taken this decision for the time being, even though, according to the profile that they were given, it seemed like he would resist a little more. I wonder what changed his mind. Chloe jokes, saying perhaps there's a girl he fell in love with. Her boss tells her to be very careful in how she proceeds to deal with the numbers. Chloe seems so excited as the call disconnects, and she says Utopia is finally here. Rito lies in bed thinking of Arisa and why she became a terrorist when suddenly he receives a notification on his phone. The pendant he gave Arisa until showed its location out of the country, but now the location shows that it's in Japan. However, he still can't find her specific location from here. Just then, Akane arrives at the door, and Rito hides the phone, but she says she has something important to talk about. Rito takes her to the bathroom and turns on the shower to make sure no one can hear them. Chloe visits Hino, and he doesn't seem pleased to see her as he asks her what she wants. Chloe apologizes for sticking him in this tiny room, but the situation is a tad bit chaotic right now, so she kindly requests him to stay here until things calm down a bit. Hino says he's heard of all the things going on with the terrorists and the World HQ staff, but he asks if the other girls, the ones who aren't here, are safe. Chloe replies saying obviously they are because UW World HQ is an ally to women everywhere. That being said, she asks why there is another girl beside his assigned attendant Ishiragi in the room. Hino explains that Kitayama Rena takes care of him, but Chloe doesn't allow any exceptions, saying that all contact with him must go through her. Including his food and his baths must be kept a check on and is necessary to maintain his safety. Hino gets up angrily telling Chloe she shouldn't think that any man is going to necessarily do what she's saying. Akane wants to tell Rito about her mother Kara. The directors are going to be put on trial for the crime of manufacturing the MK virus. Rito asks if they are really the ones who did this. Akane says she dislikes her mother but doesn't believe she would do that. However, she doesn't trust Chloe at all. She says her mother was always such a hardworking and honest person who prioritizes her work over her husband and her family. Akane supports herself against the shower rail and cries as she tells Rito she had a younger brother until 5 years ago, but Kara didn't even attend his funeral. She was busy doing everything she could to help this country face the pandemic. Rito puts his hand on her shoulder and suggests they should talk to director Kara and that he'll ask Chloe to make it happen. Suddenly, Kuroda runs into their room and turns the TV on as she announces a lot of trouble. The three of them see Arisa on the screen announcing that she's broadcasting this from Japan. Rito recognizes her immediately, and Akane asks if she's the one he had been looking for. The two girls can't understand how this is possible, and Kuroda says she has hijacked the airwaves. Arisa declares they are not terrorists, but are just a group who will free the world from the Udai. She takes apart the top of her robe to reveal an emblem on her melons. She belongs to the group Izanami. Rito sees the pendant around her neck, and that's how he knows for sure that it is her. Arisa continues to say that the UW claims its job is to return order to the world, but it is full of liars and hypocrites, as she says she'll show the world some proof. The camera turns to number 4, who's now awake, and she introduces him as Kenbuchi Zen. Kuroda is shocked because she recognizes him as number 4. Arisa continues to say Kenbuchi is a man who can survive in the outside world just like Nizuhiro Rito, the women who ruled the Ugari, and the world had kept his and the others' existence secret. And they also have proof of another criminal act by the Udai. She continues to show footage displaying the remains of satellites abandoned in a factory somewhere in the world. High concentrations of the MK virus was found in one of their parts, and the quantity was unbelievably high. As the president of the company is now one of the leaders of the Ugari, so what does this mean? It's highly likely that the current leadership of the Ugari are the ones who spread the MK virus around the world. The UW is trying to eliminate all men and create a world composed of only women. Everyone is shocked to hear her bold claims, and Rito asks Kuroda if what Arisa is saying is true, but she can't believe it either. Arisa continues by saying the UW are already investigating huge resources in America into creating a way to give birth to children using only female genes. Their plan of creating a world with only women is getting closer and closer to reality. On behalf of the Izanami group, Arisa demands that the 4 men, including Izhara Rito, as well as all men in cold sleep under UW control, should be turned over to them. She sends the rest of the women a message telling them to protect any men in their areas who might be in cold sleep. Rito immediately thinks of his brother Ryu. Arisa says a world without men would be wrong, so she calls out to the women of the world to stand up. Before Arisa can declare the next move of the members of Izanami, the broadcast is interrupted by another broadcast by Shudo of the UW apologizing for the inconvenience, since terrorists had hijacked their airwaves, but they have now restored things to their proper state. She tells the people to not be misled by their misinformation and stay calm. Rito angrily walks to Chloe's office and asks her to explain Arisa's broadcast. She tries to change the subject by saying the Japanese summer sure is hot, but when he insists, she replies that if their goal was to destroy all men, he would be long dead. Well, that makes an annoying amount of sense. Rito argues that he's known worldwide, so they would want to kill him last. But Chloe says that not even a single one of the men in cold sleep have died under their care. She understands his desire to believe the words of his old lover, but Arisa Tachibana is one of the terrorists who stole number 4 by force. Chloe proceeds to take off her shirt since it's so hot and declares she's going to shower. She invites him to join while she unzips the last garment that covers her giant jugs, but Rito runs out before she has a chance to reveal anything. Sounds like a missed opportunity. Chloe reports back to her boss about there aren't any problems with the Japan branch since the Japanese are quite obedient. Her boss tells her that the broadcast is being completely blacked out from the media on their side of the world, and Chloe says their controlled information is complete. Their brainwashing of the staff and the women in leadership roles is complete. Thus, their plan is going smoothly, and her boss once more instructs her to be careful in dealing with the numbers, especially Ms. Hira Rito. Kuroda asks Rito what they should do now, and though he doesn't know a lot, he just knows he has to get Arisa back. Akane remembers how she and Sui managed to visit Akane's mother, Director Kihara, in prison amidst all the chaos. She's not surprised to hear a civilian organization is rebelling against the UW. She has a strong feeling that UW World HQ already knew this was going to happen, and as much as she hates to admit it, their network of spies in Japan exceeded their own. Akane says she's not here to help her but has a question. Kihara directly states that there are some things she cannot disclose. Thinking back on this, Akane suggests they should all get out of here. Rita wants to see Arisa. They decide to continue the rest of their conversation in a more private space, but Sui warns them someone is inside as soon as they enter. Turns out they've entered number 3's room and introduces himself as Doi Shouda, number 3. However, his appearance is totally different and he appears a lot more attractive. Karen hooks Doi up to a machine. He never thought he'd be going back into one of these, but Karen promises it won't take 5 years this time. She tells him anti-aging technology has come a long way and that he'll be able to maintain his youth for 30 years. He agrees, so she starts the procedure by turning on the switch. The machine fills up with fluid, and once the procedure is complete, Karen declares that since Doi was in puberty, he grew a lot. Suddenly, Doi is much taller, more muscular, and has gotten retina surgery, so he doesn't need glasses anymore. He was wondering why he could see better. She takes him to a dresser where she gives him a haircut, and Doi says he feels like a different person altogether. Doi and Rito shake hands, and Kuroda says it's against the rules to go into a numbers room without permission. Karen puts on an act of being scared of the scary things that the terrorists were saying on TV, so they were looking for a safe space. Rito asks Doi where he had been all this time, and he says he was at a high school in Kaiman City, which was recently bombed by terrorists, so they were evacuated here. But to him, it looks like this place may not be much safer. Doi says he wants to ask Rito something. Karen asks Rito what this man's person is like, and Rito reveals that it's hard to figure out what Chloe might be thinking at any given moment. She and the rest of the Yugali leaders seem to think that the ones behind the airwave hijack Izanami are evil. Even though Chloe saved his life, he doesn't know which one of them is right yet. Karen seemed excited and thanked him for the information. She seems to recognize Kuroda Maria, and she reunites her with her little sister Chifuyu. All of Chifu's friends are really happy she got to finally meet her big sister. They can't understand why she's dressed in a lab coat and knickers. Ichiju tells Kuroda about the terrorist attack over drinks and how they found out just now that there are 4 other men besides Doi who are resistant to the virus. It's been a crazy few days, and it's hard for Shunka to keep up. Kuroda thanks them for taking care of her sister, but Chifuyu, as Delulu, is always saying Kuroda doesn't need to bow to them because she's the one who's been taking care of everyone else. Kuroda pulls her cheeks, telling her to stop acting like that. Chifuyu asks Kuroda as she heard she's Rito's attendant, so did she mate with him yet? At this point, Kuroda really spits out her drink on the other 3 girls and asks Chifuyu what she's saying because they haven't even talked about it yet. Once Doi and Karen are all alone, he asks her what she thinks of Rito, and she thinks he's a big softie, just like she was told. Doi says he felt intelligent compared to number 1 Hino. Karen tells him Rito was originally a med student. He asks her if Yuzu-sensei is here, but Karen assures him she was sent somewhere safe after the terrorist attack, and she hasn't even told the leaders of the Yugawa about her precise location. Now, since they'll be meeting Mans whoever, Karen tells him to get some sleep. Doi can't help but feel sad and miss Yuzuki. It's 11 at night, and Mira enters Rito's room apologizing for bothering him so late. He says it's fine because he's the one who called her here in the first place. Mira asks what he wants to talk about, and Rito asks if she'll come to the shower room with him for privacy, of course. Mira gets the wrong idea because Rito conveniently forgot to explain that this is what he and Akane do when they don't want anyone from the Yugaoyu spying on their conversations. Rito starts by saying that the terrorist attacks, the arrest of Kihara and the other directors, the airwaves hijacking, there's just too much going on. However, the point of him calling her here is to invite Mira to escape and run away with them. Mira is shocked as Rito explains that the girl who was speaking during the airwaves hijacking was Arisa, the girl he was looking for. Mira asks if it didn't occur to him that she might tell the yahello. If he's being absolutely honest, Rito says it didn't occur to him because she's been there for him ever since he woke up from a cold sleep. He suddenly gets all passionate, calling her to leave with him so they can find out together what's true and what was a lie. Even though the yahello calls them terrorists, he trusts Erisa. Mira says she can't go, and Rito asks if it's because the yahello is important to her. However, things take an unexpected twist when Mira takes off all her clothes and asks Rito to mate with her right there, and then if he really wants her to go with him. If he expects her to leave the yahello and put herself in danger, shouldn't it be easy for him? Rito takes this the wrong way and thinks Mira doesn't want to go with him at all because she should know he's going to refuse. Mira starts sobbing on the bathroom floor, saying she wants to go but she can't. A flashback of Mira's childhood is shown when she grew up learning about Mizhara Rito and learned to write his name long before she ever even met him. Rito apologizes to Mira because he obviously didn't mean to make her cry. Mira grabs his shirt and the two of them almost kiss each other, but their precious moment is interrupted by two guard women prying open the bathroom door. Behind them is the woman from the jet, Pope, who declares that Rito and Mira are coming with her. The woman introduces herself as Pope, Chloe Mansfield's aide. She informs them that Akane, Ryuzoji, and Sue have also been captured. Rito is furious and asks why, so Pope explains that they seem to have developed quite a liking for Rito. They can't have Rito forgetting his position and running around doing whatever he likes, so he's coming to America with them. The Izanami terrorists here in Japan make it too dangerous for him to be here. Of course, they need to keep him safe since he's currently the most valuable person in the world. She tells him not to worry, since the directors have already instructed her to take good care of him. Pope orders him to get into the car since they are heading to the airport. Suddenly, Akane shows up with a tranq gun and shoots the guards while Sui manages to knock them out. Rito is relieved to see Akane and Sui, but they soon find themselves in a compromised position as Pope stands with a loaded gun aimed at Mira's head and she's taken hostage. However, Pope is suddenly taken out by an attack from Rei-Ah as Akane reveals she was the one who saved them as well. There's no way she could not save the girl she loves. Rei-Ah tells them to hurry and escape, and Rito can't believe she's helping them. The entire facility is in chaos since Pope and her guards' GPS has been off since yesterday, and they can't have their most valuable resource just escape. Karen notices that the staff are in a big hurry over something and asks Chloe if something is wrong. Chloe says one of her girls made a mistake and that's all, and asks them why they're really here. They didn't come all the way from Kaiman City just to say hello. She directs the question to Doi, but Karen says she'd like to speak on behalf of him as his attendant. Karen says she'd like to make a deal. Once she's finished, Chloe says she likes her proposition because it makes sense and that she'll give it full consideration. Karen also has another request and wants Chloe to introduce her to the three Maggie. Karen says she's heard a lot about them, the three geniuses who run the yahello, all of different ages and born in different places, but all they have in common in their brilliant intellects and hatred of men. Chloe smiles, but Karen says she was just joking about the last part. She also says if Doi is willing to show them a cooperative attitude, she might have a chance. Karen says Chloe can set that up for them later, but for now, there is one more thing. She asks if they are going to occupy Japan, and Chloe responds by saying if she knows her Japanese correctly, then occupy might be the wrong word since they've been sent by World HQ to protect the Japanese people. Karen says she can use whatever word she likes, but in her opinion, a Japanese person should rule Japan. Chloe says she's wasting her time and to be direct in what she wants to say. Karen asks if Chloe would give her the position of the National Affairs Director. Rito and all his friends arrive at the place that Rei-Ah has brought them to. There Rito meets Mahiru and he's glad that she made it here. Mahiru says everyone helped her, so Rito thanks everyone. One of the ladies says she was wondering why Rei-Ah contacted her in such an emergency, and that too out of the blue. Rei-Ah says since she was a citizens relations officer, she knows a lot of the locals, and the lady says that Katajiri's successor doesn't care about them at all. Everybody hates yahello, but they all love Rei-Ah, even she's blushing at this point. The lady moves on to Mahiru and says she can't believe that Mizhara Rito is actually her brother, and she apologizes for not telling her before. The lady says it's fine because nowadays everyone has their secrets. Another old lady says she thinks he's cuter in person than on TV, and the first lady tells her to get her dirty hands off humanity's treasure. It's not like she's hurting him. Rie-A's sister is also present and she asks her if it is ready. Her sister responds by saying that it's a little old, but it will work. She also asks Ria what she will do now. Ria announces to everyone that they will stay here until sunset, and she has a plan for after that. They'll start moving at nightfall, so they should get some rest until then. Rito thanks her, but she makes sure he knows it's not for his sake. Meanwhile, that night, Doi enjoys a threesome with Akira, Shunka, and Ichiju. Ichiju admits that she felt that Doi might leave them after he grew up and had the sudden change in his appearance, but he still makes the same face. Doi asks if she preferred his older version, and Ichiju says she thought he was really cute, and he proceeds to make out with them. Once he's finished, Ichiju requests him to start again. She wants to feel all the pleasure all over again. After he's finished with them, he leaves the bear girls to rest up in his bed as he meets Karen outside his room, who asks him how it went. Doi says he feels good, and Karen says that's great since it has been a few days since he mated. She notices how he looks like he's had a really good time, and he agrees. Karen says it feels like he's really grown up and she's happy for him. Doi asks if Ms. Mansfield got back to them, but all she has said is that she'll think about it. Doi realizes it might not be so easy to get the position that she wants. Karen also fills him in on the latest news of number 2 running away. Doi is shocked and realizes that Reito is braver than he thought. Karen says things are going to get really busy, and they are going to need the others' help. Ria guides the group to a ship and then says this is as far as she and Mira will go. She has already assigned someone who will get the ship out of Japanese waters and will help them with the rest. Rito thanks her again for everything she's done for him, and so does Mahiru for taking care of her brother. Akane, Sui, Kuroda, and Mahiru go on ahead and board the ship, while Rito bids goodbye to Mira. Mira looks really sad and dejected, but Rito thanks her for her help and for being by his side ever since he woke up from cold sleep, whether she was his attendant or not. Mira says she should be the one thanking him since it was an honor serving by his side. Rito envelops her in a tight hug and promises to be back. He instructs her to stay safe until then, and she says she will. Rito boards the ship and introduces him to the person who'll be getting them out of Japan. She's with Izanami and only says they'll be heading south to Taiwan, where he will meet Irisa. She takes off her hood, and it turns out to be the girl with the pixie cut who had infiltrated Doi's school. Rito is a little surprised to hear he's headed to Taiwan and not Niigata, but the girl explains that it's too risky to stay entirely within Japan and that Irisa is already on her way. She also said that she wanted to see him. Rito looks over the calm waters of the sea, thinking about how so much has happened since he woke up from a cold sleep. His thoughts are mainly centered around Mira, and he's questioning why she can't lead the Japan branch. Just then, Mahiru shows up behind him and accuses him of thinking about Mira. Well, she's right, but he refuses when she threatens to complain about him to Irisa. Anyway, she hands him a tablet, but she has no idea who it's from and walks away. Rito can't understand why she's mad. The tablet turns on, and he finds a way to communicate with Hino on a video call. Hino commends his bravery, and Rito apologizes for worrying him. Hino thinks Rito made the right choice because the blonde chick told him no more mating and won't even let him leave his room anymore. That's probably because of Rito's escape, so she's practically locked him up. Rito says he wishes Hino could have come along, but they had to act fast. Well, Hino says this tablet is special since his lovely and talented assistant prepared it for him. It uses an underground net connection, so the Yuga-Yu won't be able to track it. Hino asks Rito to update him on his situation once in a while and hangs up, but not before he tells Rito to say hi to Mahiru for him. Back in his room, Hino tells Neneko he's worried about Mizuhara and all the others who aren't here right now, like Kitayama and his girls. Neneko says she'll do everything she can to keep the girls safe. Hino thanks her for her help, but she ends up asking if he wished he would have left with Rito. Hino says no as he pulls up all his pictures from the past year, saying he couldn't possibly leave them all behind. Chloe has Pope stripped bare and her arms tied across a giant cross as punishment for letting Rito get away. Pope asks for another chance and promises Chloe she won't fail her. Now it's Rhea and Mira's turn. Chloe says she should have kept her eyes on both of them. Rhea does the responsible thing and takes all the blame for the entire plan, as she says Mira had nothing to do with it. Chloe can see right through Rhea and finds out about her feelings for Mira. She orders both of them to be taken to the cells. Now it's time for her next step in the plan to exterminate all men. Karen takes advantage of the situation now that number 1 and 2 are not allowed to mate. Thus, she lets Doi pick a girl of his choice, and he picks Kitayama Rena. Rito and his friends arrive at the meeting place, and he finally meets Irisa. The two of them reunite and decide to work together to develop a cure for the MK virus. Because if the two of them don't, then nobody will.